Chapter 201. In the end, I didn't give Han Fei the address. Instead, I forced him to record the conversation and save it to 3 format. Then I sent it to my email. After receiving the message, I couldn't work anymore. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I hurriedly took my laptop and returned to my room. I opened it as fast as I could, entered, and clicked. After a series of buzzing sounds, Zhuo Bufan's voice sounded first. Han Fei? Do you have any news today? My heart skipped a beat. His voice made my heart throb. Zhuo Bufan rarely said hello on the phone. He always spoke directly. His voice was soft and mellow. It was indescribably pleasant to the ears. Then, it was Han Fei's lazy voice. Even if I have news, why should I tell you? Zhuo Bufan paused, and then his voice stirred. Han Fei, did you see Xiao Nuo? Or do you know where she is? Zhuo Bufan was really smart. With just one sentence, he could tell. Why should I tell you? I clutched my chest. Han Fei, if he wants to know, just tell him. Why do you have to make him anxious? Zhuo Bufan said gently, of course, it's for Xiao Nuo. I think you don't want her to be sad. If I tell you, that will make her sad. Isn't it because of you that she's sad? There's a saying that the one who started the trouble should untie it. Have you ever heard of it? Xiao Nuo told me to tell you that she doesn't love you anymore. You don't need to look for her anymore. She will never see you again. I wanted to cry. Han Fei, why are you like this? Why did you say that? I don't believe that Xiao Nuo would say that. His voice was still gentle. Why don't you believe it? Based on what you have done, Xiao Nuo has long been disappointed in you. What did I do? Why didn't you tell me? Are you afraid that I would understand? I don't want to talk to you. Let me tell you, this is what Xiao Nuo said. She said that she's good and that you don't owe her anything. She told you to be happy and not to look for her anymore. Xiao Nuo. His voice was so sweet that I almost agreed. Then, I remembered that I was listening to a recording. Then, Zhuo Bufan's voice was calm. You don't know where she is, do you? She just called you and asked you to tell me that, didn't she? Han Fei was a little annoyed. Zhuo Bufan, are you so sure that Xiao Nuo called me because of you? Are you sure that I don't have a place in Xiao Nuo's heart? How do you know she didn't call me because she missed me? Zhuo Bufan remained silent. Zhuo Bufan, are you a modern man or not? In this society, the most volatile thing was love. Everyone was surrounded by countless temptations. If you didn't do anything, it would seem that your love was only her business. If it was any other girl, they would have run away countless times. Love needs to be managed and maintained. It can't stand any test at all. Do you understand? Han Fei, you're right, but Zhuo Bufan is really not a modern person. Zhuo Bufan remained silent. Han Fei said angrily, damn it, why am I telling you this? Scram as far as you can. What does your life or death have to do with me? Han Fei, where do you think Xiao Nuo is now? Zhuo Bufan's voice was as cool as water. He was not affected by Han Fei's words at all, and there was no trace of anger in his voice. He understood Han Fei. I think Zhuo Bufan has always understood everyone. However, in this understanding and tolerance, there seemed to be a lack of love. Han Fei's voice also calmed down. He snorted and said, I also want to know. Zhuo Bufan sighed softly and said as if to himself, Xiaono, oh Xiaono, you little fool. Are you torturing yourself or me? Zhuo Bufan, come on. Have you been tortured? You and Xiao Nuo are together. What have you done for her? She knows everything about your preferences. Do you know her? She always eats porridge with you. Do you think she likes porridge so much? Xiao Nuo, she is a fool. As long as she likes to eat, why would I mind eating anything with her? Zhuo Bufan's voice finally sounded a little sad. Han Fei said mockingly, will a wise and intelligent person like Zhuo Bufan feel precious after losing him? I won't lose Xiao Nuo. I will never allow her to really leave me. No matter where she is in the world, I will definitely find her. Han Fei was silent for a few seconds and then sneered. If a person wants to hide, it will not be easy to find her. Zhuo Bufan, I don't have any hope for you. Moreover, even if you find her, I don't think you can make her happy. Han Fei, You and I both know that if there is one person in this world who can make Xiao Nua happy, it will only be Zhuobufan. Zhuobufan, why are you so confident? A person can't only love one person in his life. She will forget you one day. I will find her before she forgets. Han Fei, next time she calls you, please help me tell her that I love her very much. I create obstacles for myself because I have nothing better to do. Whether you love her or not, you won't tell her yourself. Let me tell you, in this world, the one who loves Xiao Nua the most and understands Xiao Nua the most is me. I know Xiao Nua is a kind, independent, optimistic, and confident girl, and I can give her practical help at work. I understand her feelings, understand her career, understand her likes and dislikes. These days, I've spent more time with her than you have with her. We don't know how close we are. God, it's such a long speech, it's making me dizzy. This Han Fei, did he want to record Zhuobufan's words or take the opportunity to confess? It was rare for Zhuobufan to interrupt someone else's words. Yes, but you lack faith. Goodbye. The call ended. After 3 seconds of silence, Han Fei's gentle voice said, Xiao Nua, Zhuobufan's confidence is admirable, but in love, this kind of confidence and certainty is the most hurtful. Promise me, think about it carefully and make a choice for yourself, okay? Then, the recording slowly came to an end. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I listened to the recording several times. In this recording, Zhuobufan had only said 17 sentences, but Han Fei had said 66. Really, this Han Fei? I shook my head and sat down. Only then did I realize that I had been standing for a long time. Since the beginning of the recording, I hadn't done anything else, including sitting down. I smiled wryly and called Han Fei. Han Fei, I've finished listening to the recording. Han Fei said with a smile, Are you going to give me a good evaluation? Are you going to take advantage of the situation? Or are you going to take advantage of the situation? I only know that I have to fight for what I want. I can't think about anything else. I found it funny. Han Fei, you really aren't a gentleman, but a despicable person. I joked, how could I say that about you? Even if I had to say something, I would say that you're a successful businessman. You're good at seizing the opportunity to promote yourself. Then, did I succeed in my promotion? I remember that there's something I haven't done yet. I'll call you another day. I didn't know what to say to his joke, so I wanted to end the call. Han Fei said quietly, Xiao Nua, I'm not forcing you to answer. You don't have to be like this. I'm just suspecting that you've already gotten Zhuobufan's voice. I don't have any value to you anymore. Will you call me in the future? Chapter 202. 185. Mount Sinai. Moses and his people could not pass through the city of Marduk controlled by Assur, and they had been wandering in the mountains looking at the fertile plains for several months, constantly moving from one place to another, looking for water and food in the mountains and fields, living a very hard life. A road had now appeared between the Euphrates River crossing controlled by the kingdom of Babylon and the city of Marduk. Many expectant explorers came to this new city-state in search of wealth and dreams. There were also many merchants who organized convoys to send supplies back to the plains of Duk, and although the journey was difficult and dangerous, it was very profitable. The plains of Duk was like a new unknown world given by the gods, full of challenges and opportunities, and people came here in search of hope. At some point, there was a legend that a wanderer with nothing could even own a city in the plains of Duk, gaining wealth comparable to that of a king, and possibly receiving the blessings of the gods in the future. The migrants from the kingdom of Babylon naturally chose the city of Marduk, while the caravans went even further, crossing the trails trodden by carriages and pedestrians in the wilderness and doing business with the city of Salem. Salem traded with the kingdom of Babylon through the city of Marduk, and this was the result of Medanzo's discussion with Assur, which was beneficial to the development of both city-states. At present, the biggest enemy of Salem was the Assyrians in the north, and if the Assyrians advanced from the north to the south and occupied the entire plains of Duk, it would be difficult for the city of Marduk to gain a foothold. Assur also did not want to be enemies with Salem, and he was happy to see a barrier in the middle of the plains of Duk to block the strong enemies from the north, so that he would have more time to stabilize the city of Marduk. The fine iron and leather goods produced by Salem were also materials needed by the Kingdom of Babylon, not to mention paragons. The mining skills of the town of Duk were taught by Ammon to Link, and Link in turn taught them to the cavemen in the tribe, and now there was a group of excellent craftsmen in Salem who could not only smelt ores but also create all kinds of exquisite objects. However, there were restrictions on trade between the Kingdom of Babylon and the city of Salem. For example, products such as fine iron could only be shipped out of the plains of Duk and were not allowed to be shipped in. Weapons, armor, war horses, and other very important strategic supplies were not allowed to be sold to the city of Salem. If Salem needed these things, it would either have to build them itself or obtain them from other sources, and Ammon had opened another trade route in the charcoal marsh, of course, to solve this problem. But even if that long trade route was opened, it would not be able to meet the urgent needs. Salem was understaffed and had many things to do, and it was impossible to use all of them to build war supplies. Before the road to the charcoal marsh was opened, Madanzo came up with another idea, which was to carry out a kind of smuggling trade. Madanzo was originally a smuggler of damask billets, so it was easy for him to instruct people in this business. Entering the wilderness to explore and hunt was full of danger, and naturally one had to carry weapons, armor, and horses. The personal equipment of those exploration teams and wandering hunters who went deep into the wilderness was not included in the trade restrictions. But a full set of fine weapons, armor, and war horses was by no means affordable for the average person, and many exploration teams carried simple weapons and walked into the wilderness to try their luck. A trading firm in Marduk City provided loans to these people, and the money borrowed was used to buy war horses and weapons designated by the trading firm. Who would borrow this money, and how would they pay it back in the future? There was no need to worry about this, as after entering the wilderness, someone would buy their weapons and war horses at a high price, and after repaying the loan to the trading firm, they would still be able to make a profit, and there would be no need to venture deep into the wilderness. It was normal for explorers to lose their weapons and war horses in the wilderness and jungle, sometimes because the road was difficult, sometimes because they encountered ferocious beasts, and sometimes even their own lives were lost. If they, luckily, escaped back from an expedition and returned to the trading firm to repay the loan, they would still be able to make a profit, and then continue to borrow to buy equipment before setting off again. It was in this way that Madanzo allowed the city of Salem to obtain a steady stream of strategic supplies. Borrowing from the trading firm was calculated according to time, and the wandering explorers who smuggled supplies in this way would not make money if they delayed too long, so they had to strive to go and return quickly and steal as many times as possible in the shortest possible time in order to earn more profit. The owner of the trading firm in Marduk City was also an old friend, the wealthy merchant of the city of Uruk, Neskatli. He not only made money by borrowing, but also by selling all kinds of strategic supplies, organizing caravans from all over the Kingdom of Babylon to Marduk City, and had a pleasant cooperation with Madanzo. Due to the excellent operation of Neskatli's trading firm, the goods shipped, the customers attracted, and the taxes paid were all very high, promoting the prosperity and development of Marduk City, and was praised many times by the mayor of Marduk, Usser. When Neskatli came to Marduk City to inspect his own trading firm, Mayor Usser specially invited the wealthy merchant to a banquet and said that he would report Neskatli's achievements to the kingdom, and that he might be able to receive a noble title, as long as he continued to contribute to Marduk City. On the high slopes of the mountains, caravans and explorers could be seen going back and forth between Marduk City and Salem, but Moses and the others could not move forward, as they were bound by an oracle. They were not allowed to build statues for any other gods except Marduk. But they believed in their one and only God and accepted Allah's guidance in order to get here through all the hardships, and Moses and his people were naturally unwilling to accept this condition. At first, they prayed to the gods all night, and then they heard the voice of the oracle. Madanzo told them that this was the test of the gods, the last obstacle they had to overcome before returning home. The gods had given them confidence and courage, and now they needed to solve it with their own wisdom and strength. The implication was that Allah would not take them directly, and this time it was up to the people to find a way to get through it themselves. What should they do? From the top of the mountain, they could see the vast plains of Duk in the distance, But the city of Marduk was in front of them, and behind it was the Syrian desert. The food carried in Moses's spatial artifact had been exhausted, and Allah no longer performed miracles, so they could only pick wild fruits and catch prey in the mountains to fill their stomachs. The miners of Duk moved in the mountains in pursuit of prey and water, and when spring came, they finally stopped their weary footsteps for a while and found a valley on the edge of the mountains where they could stop. There was a thin spring on the hillside, forming a winding mountain stream through a valley sheltered from the wind and facing the sun. Moses took out the grain seeds he carried with him, ordered his people to cultivate the land by the mountain stream to plant crops, and built simple huts to live at the foot of the mountain. The people guarded the fields from being trampled by wild beasts and took turns to go hunting in the nearby mountains. The seeds had just sprouted, and there was still a long time before the harvest, and every day they had to go to the mountain stream to fetch water for irrigation and go into the mountains to hunt for food, so life was very difficult. Suffering was secondary. The most torturous thing was the feeling of not seeing hope. A clansman said to Moses, "You asked us to cultivate the fields and build huts. Do you want to settle here?" Looking around, there were no signs of human habitation. Not far from the foot of the mountain was a boundless desert. We were only guarding a small mountain stream. Living in this barren valley, we could only build the simplest thatched huts. If this is the case, it is better to stay in Ammon's territory. Why did we leave in the first place? We have gone through so many hardships, and what we want is not today's result. Moses replied, "This is just a place where we stop temporarily. Spring is coming, we must sow in the autumn to have a harvest, and with food, we can survive the next winter and go further." A clansman asked again, "Temporarily? But how long are we going to wander here? Where is the God who guides us?" Moses advised, "This is a test from God, and we have to overcome it ourselves. Sowing seeds here is for the future harvest, and building houses is so that everyone can rest better, and when the day comes when we embark on our journey again, we will have a better hope and future." Everyone asked, "Then can you tell us how long we are going to stay here?" Moses did not answer this question because he did not know the answer himself, but leaned on his iron staff and said, "Look at the ground under your feet. The broken barley is full of vitality, and look at the clouds in the sky. The changing patterns are always so beautiful and magical. If the heart is full of hope, even the sun on that desert is always so bright." In fact, Moses himself could have quietly bypassed the city of Marduk and entered the plains of Duk, and after crossing the Red Sea, he had already attained the 7th level of the power of two sides. Although Ammon had not yet given him the guidance of the power of origin, Moses was already a supreme mage and supreme warrior, and he could go anywhere he wanted. But Moses did not abandon his clansmen. He was their leader, and he had to fulfill his promise. At this time, Usur sent someone to find them again, and Usur's messenger told Moses, "The great god Marduk has sent down another oracle. You are all the best craftsmen on the continent, and if you are willing to live in the city of Marduk and swear to worship the great god Marduk forever, you will have a happy and prosperous life. There are comfortable houses and beautiful girls in the city of Marduk. Craftsmen's workshops have been prepared for you, and there is good wine by the workbench." Moses refused this request, but some people were already tempted in private. Instead of waiting aimlessly here, it was better to go to the city of Marduk and live a comfortable life. It was just that it was difficult to face the guidance of Allah like this, but the God had already said that they needed to find a way to get through the difficulties on their own. In that case, could they also accept Usur's conditions? If they gave up persevering, the benefits were right in front of them, and they had suffered enough for a long time. Moses was aware of the thoughts of many of his clansmen, and he was also trying to get out of the predicament. He sent the 12 judges to climb the various high slopes near the plains of Duk to observe the terrain and check if there were secret passages to pass through, and then return to the station to discuss countermeasures. After the 12 judges left, Moses climbed alone to the highest mountain next to the station, called Mount Sinai. Moses prayed on the top of Mount Sinai for 3 days and 3 nights, calling in his heart, "Oh, my one and only God, please give us true guidance. I do not ask you to move the mountains and fill the seas so that we can reach our homeland directly. I just want you to show us the right faith so that we will not get lost in the journey." 3 days passed, and Mount Sinai was silent. Moses was worried about the situation of his clansmen and was finally ready to go back, so he stood up with a long sigh. He was about to go down the mountain with his iron staff when he suddenly heard Allah's voice again. Moses, you could have passed through the city of Marduk long ago. Why are you still here? Moses hurriedly turned and knelt down, prostrating himself to the invisible God in the void. My God, you have finally spoken. Marduk sent down an oracle and made us swear that we would not build statues for any god other than him, and this oath has stopped our clansmen in their tracks. Allah asked in return, did I ask you to build a statue for me? If you really wanted to build a statue for me, what would it look like? Moses froze, and it took a long time before he suddenly understood. I understand what you mean, not building a statue does not shake our faith. Allah asked again, then why haven't you led your clansmen into the plains of Duk yet? Marduk is not an obstacle. Moses sighed. But the clansmen don't understand this, and even I am not sure. It would be disrespectful to you to agree to such a condition, and the clansmen are afraid of losing the guidance of God and even of your revenge. My God, are you really unwilling to show your face to your people and not want us to build a statue for you? Allah replied, yes, I just gave you a promise to strengthen your faith in your hearts, and you do not need and will not be allowed to build a statue for me. If you ever see my face, it is also a secret that you must keep strictly. Because from the beginning, I have made such an agreement with my clansmen. Today these agreements will be made clear, and you will bring them back to announce them. Moses nodded quickly and said, okay, please make an agreement with me and my clansmen. Allah said solemnly, you must not have any other gods but me. Otherwise you will lose my guidance. That is the first agreement. You must not build a tangible statue for God. If that is the case, future generations may forget the guidance of faith and only pray to the idol on the altar. That is the second agreement. These two agreements are enough to get you out of your current predicament. That is my request and my promise. Moses kissed the dirt and said, thank you, my God. Allah added, you must not act in my name, and everyone must be responsible for their own choices. That is the third agreement. The clansmen work hard, and after 6 days of work they should rest for a day, and they should not be forced to work again. That is the fourth agreement. You must respect your parents, and never forget who brought you into this world and gave you life. That is the fifth agreement. Moses prostrated himself on the ground and replied, I have remembered all of this. Allah continued, I have given you the guidance of power, and at the same time you must understand the various trials of this world, the tests of fate throughout, and there are 5 more warnings after returning home. Do not kill innocent people, do not deprive others of their lives for money or selfish desires, do not steal, do not bear false witness against others, and do not covet what does not belong to you. You must remember these agreements. The city of Salem has preserved the land and mines of your ancestors for you, and you must live in harmony with the people there, and do not think that everything there is due to my promise. Moses kept in mind Allah's words, which were the 10 agreements that God had made with him and his people, and later became known as the 10 Commandments. After saying this, Allah ordered again, you will convey my agreement to the people, and if they are willing to abide by it, then I will fulfill my promise and continue to guide them. After all this is done, you will come to see me on Mount Sinai. Moses walked down Mount Sinai with the agreement with Allah in mind, past the spring where the stream originated from halfway up the mountain, and ran briskly along the mountain stream. He could not wait to tell the good news to the people, and when he arrived at the place where the people lived, it was already dark, but the scene in front of him surprised him. Several large fires were lit beside the open space in the middle of the huts, which was originally used as a wheat field after the autumn harvest, and now there was a shining golden bowl in the middle of the open space. Some people were dancing around the golden bowl, and others were lined up in a circle and praying to the golden bowl. Moses shouted, "What are you doing? Where did this golden bowl come from?" The shout was accompanied by magic, and had the power to shock the soul and wake people from their stupor. The dancers stopped, and the prayers rose, with expressions of bewilderment, alarm, and defiance. Joshua flashed out of the shadow of the hut, grabbed Moses' sleeve, and said, "You are finally back. Something big happened here in the past 3 days, and a God showed a miracle." He whispered what had happened. The 12 judges who protected the people left the camp, and the leader Moses also climbed Mount Sinai. The people seemed to have lost their backbone, and even the sound of the wind blowing through the treetops at night became so frightening, and they spent the first night in fear and uneasiness. In fact, most of them were very strong, comparable to the soldiers of any regular army on the road, but for the first time in a long time, they lost the protection of a stronger force, and for a moment, they were a little panicked. On the first day after Moses left, a disturbing situation occurred. The prey in the nearby mountains had disappeared without a trace, and the people who went hunting in the mountains did not even catch a rabbit. All of them returned empty-handed, and for the first time, everyone went to bed hungry. They had eaten up the food they carried, and the last batch had been sown as seeds. Chapter 203. 186. The face of the gods. For a moment the people did not know how to answer, and a child's voice cried out, "We have one God, and we have accepted his guidance. Please do not come to shake our faith." The speaker was David Solomon. The voice of Bakri sneered, "What has that God given you, food, hope, or protection? Since that is the case, why do you suffer through this long night in hunger and cold? I can give you what he can give, and I can give what he cannot. As long as you worship me as a god and make an oath to sacrifice to me." David replied, "We don't need you, please leave." But then another shouted, "Bakri, what makes you say such a thing? Please prove yourself." The voice of Bakri replied, "Then I will prove it to you, and then I will wait for your reply. Everyone is hungry, isn't it? After dawn, the dew on the blades of grass will become a delicacy. This is a miracle I have bestowed upon you." The next morning, when they came out of the hut, they were surprised to find that the dew on the blades of grass had fallen to the ground, turning into many small frost-like balls. Someone picked it up and put it in his mouth to taste, and it tasted like a delicious snack. "What is this?" There was a lot of discussion. No one had ever seen such a thing, but it was indeed edible and delicious. The dew turned into a snack, neither too much nor too little, just enough for everyone in the camp to eat their fill for the day. It was rare that people could get delicious food without working or hunting, like a drowning man grasping at a life-saving straw in despair. The people did not sleep well that night, all waiting to see if the voice of the god would appear again. Late at night, the voice of Bakri sounded again, "Miners of Duk, I give you food and hope, and when the sun rises tomorrow, the dew on the blades of grass will still turn into a delicacy. I will also give you a bowl made of gold, a symbol of my totem, and you can pass through the city of Marduk while carrying this golden bowl. When you reach your hometown, put it on the altar and build a shrine for me. Tonight, light a fire, dance around the golden bowl, and worship it. I can hear your prayers." On the third day, Moses still had not returned, and the 12 judges were still nowhere to be seen. Some people were discussing whether Moses and the 12 judges had left on their own after receiving the power bestowed by Allah. But he left the other clansmen here. The dewdrops on the leaves of the grass turned into small frost-like snacks that tasted delicious. In the middle of the open space between the thatched cottages, a shining little golden cow appeared. It took 2 strong miners to lift it. Even this much gold was a fortune, not to mention that it was the idol of God, a miracle performed by Barker. Joshua, David, and the others persuaded everyone to reject the temptation, but more people were tempted. Since Bakri could give the food and blessings that Allah could give, why not worship this god? What's more, Allah no longer helped them pass through Marduk city, and everything needed to be figured out by the clansmen themselves, so this was also one of the ways. The people gathered together to discuss, and if Moses and the 12 judges did not return, everyone would follow Bakri's instructions. That night, the people who had eaten their fill and rested for a day came to the open space of the wheat field. Some lit a fire and began to dance around the golden cow, while others knelt in a circle and prayed to the golden cow. If they had been to Link's caveman tribe a few years ago and seen how the cavemen danced in front of the big cave with a fire, they would have found that this scene was very similar to a spontaneous primitive tribal religious ritual. If Aman had been here, he would have also discovered that this was also a ritual to summon the gods to descend, allowing Bakri's incarnation to attach to the golden cow. But the ritual was not completed, because Moses rushed back and awakened the clansmen with a shout, interrupting what everyone was doing. When Joshua finished telling the story, Moses stepped forward angrily, swung his cane and smashed the golden cow into pieces, and shouted at the crowd, "Have you forgotten your faith? Have you forgotten the one God? Have you forgotten who guided us through so many hardships? This is a betrayal, a disgrace." Some lowered their heads in shame, while others argued in a low voice, "Bakri gave us food so that we would not starve. We should thank all those who helped us in our predicament." Moses shouted, "If that's the case, what did Allah give you? The gods do not ask for your gratitude, they only want you to see the faith in your hearts. You just ate for 2 days and you forgot everything? Food without work, is this the guidance you are looking forward to? Can we and our children and grandchildren always pick dew from the grass to fill our stomachs? We did not give up hope in the face of so many hardships and threats. Did we change our faith just because of a few days of food and the temptation of a golden cow? Shouldn't we be ashamed of this? The evil god Bakri gave you food, but don't forget, Allah also showed such miracles and gave you more. Do you understand the meaning of the one God? The prey in the mountains disappeared for no reason, and I just sensed that someone cast a spell to drive away the aura left by the living beings nearby. The so-called evil god who gave you food is the one who took it away, and yet you dance and worship him, betraying your own perseverance. How can you receive the true guidance of the light by doing this? Seeing that Moses had returned, many people already felt ashamed and regretful, and when they came back to their senses, they felt a little dazed these 2 days, as if they had been bewitched by something. When Moses told the people that someone had cast a spell to drive away the aura of the living beings nearby, it dawned on everyone that Bakri had deliberately made everyone hungry before showing a miracle, and fortunately Moses returned in time. Another person muttered in a low voice, "But Bakri said that we could cross Marduk city by carrying that golden cow, and now that you have broken the golden cow, what else can we do?" Moses's anger had not subsided, and he said, "I accept the guidance of God to tell everyone how to return home and protect our faith. God has never asked us to do anything, but today it is time to make an agreement, and I have brought back the 10 agreements between God and our people. This is God's promise and God's help, so melt the fragments of this golden cow into a golden plate and inscribe the agreement with God on the golden plate. God has given me a tent, and we will use it to place the golden plate inscribed with the agreement." Moses waved his iron staff, and a luxurious tent appeared in the middle of the open space. It was the golden tent that the Lion King had used to entertain Ammon, and Ammon had used to entertain Goliath, Celia, and the others. He cast magic to melt and condense the fragments of the golden cow into a golden plate, on which appeared the 10 agreements Allah had made with his people on Mount Sinai, and he asked Joshua to read them aloud in front of everyone. The people who had come to their senses again prostrated themselves towards the golden plate in the tent, expressing their gratitude to Allah, and at the same time repenting for their actions just now. Ammon controlled the crystal shuttle and watched this scene with Medanzo, Link, and Gabriel from the clouds. Medanzo curled his lips and said, "Ammonius, guess what I thought of? The child whose parents have worked so hard to raise almost called someone else father and mother over a piece of candy." Gabriel interrupted, "If that's the case, I'm afraid the parents are also responsible, but such children are really unlikable and your analogy may not be very appropriate." Ammon said lightly, "It's not appropriate, they still don't know what faith is, but they have experienced too much suffering for too long, and people are most easily lost in despair. Today I have made an agreement, and it is their own choice whether to abide by it or not. I only give my own promise. Moses is a very good leader and guide." Link said, "We have just cleared the traces of magic in the surroundings, and the frightened prey has returned. This Bakri's technique is very clever. Ammonius, have you heard of him?" Ammon frowned and said, "I've never heard of such a god. Have you heard of him?" Medanzo slapped his forehead. "I've vaguely heard of him once, when Aesop was telling a story. There is an empire of Baz far east of the continent, and the people there seem to believe in a god called Bakri. But the empire of Baz is far away from Assyria and Babylon, and has hardly had any dealings with this place for hundreds of years, so people know very little about it." Ammon wondered, why would a god believed in by a distant empire appear here? Not far ahead is the city of Marduk, and he can actually promise to pass by carrying the totem that symbolizes him. Gabriel suddenly said, "The Duk miners who accept the guidance of Allah will go to the city of Salem, which believes in Ammonius." This sentence made Aman suddenly realize, and he nodded repeatedly and said, "So that's how it is really possible. Even if Bakri is not another incarnation of Marduk, the relationship between the two gods is by no means simple." What did Aman think of? He thought of himself. Was the Allah that the Duk miners believed in the same as the Ammonius that the people of Salem believed in? This question was not easy to answer. There must be a difference between the two. But they were all different identities of Aman, and only Aman himself could clearly understand the relationship. Marduk was also a remarkable genius who did not accept the guidance of the divine clan back then. Just like Aman today, he explored the path of the origin power on his own, and went further than Aman today, not only becoming a true god who transcended eternal life, but also becoming one of the two main gods after joining the Anunnaki divine clan. Since Aman could incarnate as Ammonius and Allah, then why couldn't Marduk, whose achievements far surpassed his, incarnate as god Marduk and Bakri at the same time? Judging from what happened today, there must be a special relationship between Marduk and Bakri, and it was likely that they were different identities of the same god. If this was the case, this great god Marduk was very interesting. He gave the Duk miners a very special test and temptation, and only a god could use such ingenious means. The miners of Duk, the descendants of the sinners in the War of the Gods, and the natives of the plains of Duk, had now become the touchstone of the various gods. The significance of the struggle surrounding them had gone beyond the miners themselves, and it had another important symbol. Madanzo let out a long breath and said, "Perhaps the gods have underestimated Marduk. I am afraid he is not only the main god believed in by the kingdom of Babylon, but he also failed in front of Ammonius. David is a good boy, but unfortunately he is still too young, and the leader of these people, Moses, does not yet know what choice he will face." Aman looked at Moses from the clouds and said, "He has conveyed my agreement to the people, and when the final mission is completed, I will tell him everything. We will keep watch tonight and see if that Bakri will appear again." On the night that Moses broke the golden bowl and cast it into a golden plate, Bakri's voice never appeared again, and the next day, no dew on the grass turned into deserts again. People walked out of their houses and looked at the fields beside the stream, where the wheat seedlings had grown to knee-high, and David suddenly shouted, "Look, there's a rabbit over there. The prey that was driven away by the evil god has returned." The people gathered around Moses again and asked, "God has given guidance and an agreement. We can already pass through Marduk city. When will we leave?" Moses pointed to the wheat and said, "When the 12 judges return, and after the autumn harvest, we will be ready to leave. Do you see the hope of sowing? Pray to God with me." The 12 judges returned one after another, and the news they brought was mixed. Looking at the plains of Duk from the various peaks, it was indeed a fertile field, with attractive figs, pomegranates, and wild grapes growing in the fields, very suitable for reclamation and farming, and would be a home flowing with milk and honey. But there was no secret passage that could pass through the area controlled by Marduk city, which had nearly 10,000 inhabitants and nearly 1,000 warriors, among whom there was no shortage of mighty highland giants. The 12 judges returned to the camp, each frowning, but when they saw the golden-topped tent and the golden plate inscribed with the agreement, they all smiled again. When everyone was gathered, Moses said, "I will once again climb Mount Sinai to listen to the voice of God. All of you prepare to leave. It will not be long before we depart. I can tell God with relief that no one of my people has been left behind." Moses climbed Mount Sinai again with his iron staff, crossing streams and climbing cliffs, and it took him a whole day to reach the top. Looking around, the clouds drifted under the blue sky, and the golden sunset glow was spectacular, but there was no sign of Allah. He knelt in the sunset and began to pray, and soon heard the voice of God. "Moses, I am gratified that as their leader, you have not abandoned any of your people. Can I ask you 2 questions? Please answer them by gazing into your heart." Moses replied piously, "My God, please ask." "Allah, you once made a vow to me, my God, Savior of hope. I call out to you, asking you to hear my voice. Do not let the flame of hope be extinguished again. Guide my people back to their homeland, even if it means sacrificing all my body, mind and life, as long as they return to the land of Duk. Is that right? Moses: Yes, this is the vow I made to you on the way out of Igut. You also once said to your people, the body is the courtyard where the soul resides, and the foothold is the home of the body and mind. If the body and mind lose their support, they do not know where the soul is, do not know what they are pursuing, that is true homelessness. Is that right? Moses: Yes, this is what my father once said to me, and I have always kept it in mind. Allah sighed. Is this the belief you guard? Even if it means sacrificing yourself for it? Moses nodded. Allah, if this is the case, I can rest assured. I want to tell you one thing, and now I want you to make a sincere choice. If you want your people to return safely to their homeland, and henceforth get rid of their status as sinners and no longer be harassed by the evil gods, you need to pay a price. Are you willing to do so? Moses: I am willing. May I ask what that price is? Allah replied slowly, the price is yourself, the leader who leads your people. You cannot enter the plains of Duk, and can only watch your people and your descendants live in that homeland from afar. Don't ask me why. If you have to make this choice, will you agree? I will not force you, I just want a clear answer. Moses straightened his body from his kneeling position, opened his arms to the sky and said, My God, why have you given me this fate? It was impossible to tell whether Allah's voice was happy or sad, and he still asked slowly, I have already said, don't ask me why. Moses covered his cheeks with both hands. If fate is so cruel and I have to make this choice, I am willing to stay on my own, but I am not satisfied with this arrangement of fate. Allah said, I am not satisfied either. May I ask if you have made a choice and will not go back on it? Moses: I have made a choice and I will not go back on it. But my God, please tell me the reason. Allah: Moses, you can look up now and you will see my face. Moses released his hands from his cheeks and raised his tear-stained eyes, but he froze and said in amazement, You. Why is it you? Ammon finally showed up and stood in front of Moses, pointing to the iron staff by his hand and saying, The staff I gave you, you should be more than familiar with it. When you were in the empire of Igut, didn't you hear what weapon Supreme General Ammon used on the battlefield? Moses: It's a branch, I should have thought of it. Ammon laughed. It doesn't matter if you thought of it or not, today you have finally seen my face clearly. Does it make any difference to your beliefs whether I am Ammon or not? Moses looked at him, and after a long time, as if suddenly waking up, he bent down and kissed the soil and said, My God, it makes no difference. I don't know how to thank you for everything you have done. From the moment you took away the whip that lashed me, you have been guiding me and my people, and only you know us so well and can do all this. Ammon sat down. Now that you have seen me, do you have any wishes or requests? Chapter 204. 187. It's all Murin's fault. Ammon looked up at the clouds in the dusk and said, I have to start from a long time ago. It has something to do with the origin of the miners in Duk, and the battle of the gods in Anunnaki. He told a long story to Moses, and at the end he mentioned the bet between Enlil and goddess Murin. If Murin could not win this bet, even if the Duk miners could pass through the city of Marduk, they would still be blocked or even hunted down by the divine emissaries sent by Enlil. The gods also had to abide by their oaths, and if Murin won, the Duk miners would henceforth get rid of their status as sinners, but this was secondary. The most important thing was that Enlil would no longer make things difficult for them. Ammon himself was not afraid of Enlil, but he had also seen the divine emissaries under Enlil, such as Bright Moon Night. If Enlil really sent an emissary to attack Moses and the others, it would indeed be impossible to guard against. Now that Moses had made a choice and Murin had won the bet, the Duk miners would no longer be harassed and punished by the Anunnaki divine clan, and they would only have to face the trials and tribulations of the human world. Although this bet was not proposed by Ammon, and he was also very disgusted with Enlil, he also hoped that Murin would win, but it required Moses to make a sacrifice. Moses' sacrifice was not without reward, and Ammon finally said, Now you have a chance to accept the guidance of the Anunnaki divine clan, learn the secret of becoming a god, and become an emissary beyond mortals. Moses froze for a moment before replying, "My God, are you not willing to continue to guide me?" Amon smiled and said, "Of course I am willing, as long as your faith is firm." Moses, you have made 10 agreements with me, and I have engraved them in my soul. Of course I will not join the Anunnaki divine clan. Why are you telling me this? Amon stood up. I'm only telling you the reason for all of this. It's clear that you've made the other choice, so I'll guide you to the source of your power. It's time for you to leave your tribe. Come with me. Moses also stood up and asked, "Where are you taking me?" Amon, first go to Murin's divine palace to see Murin, and then go to a place called the Garden of Eden to make it an ideal home. Moses asked in confusion, "Why do you want to see Murin? I've already rejected her." Amon explained, "Guiding you to join the God system is not a request. It is a kind intention and reward, because the sacrifice you made helped your people. You can choose not to accept, but you should also thank. Whether you like Murin or not, you have to learn to look at a god seriously. Besides, you have another task, which is to learn how to build a divine palace. Our divine palace is the Garden of Eden." As he spoke, Amon waved his hand, and a force wrapped around Moses. The space around them seemed to shift, and they rose into the air without moving. Moses hurriedly said, "Are we leaving now? I have one last thing to do." Amon, "Of course you have to go and say hello. I'll send you down the mountain." Moses bowed and said, "My God, please send me to the mountainside first." Amon nodded, and without any visible movement, the two of them quickly moved to the mountainside and came near the spring where the stream originated. The space that had shifted suddenly merged with the surrounding light and shadow, and Moses's body relaxed and stood on the ground again. He exclaimed, "My God, how did you know I was coming here?" Amon smiled slightly. "Because I know you, let's do it." Moses waved his iron staff and struck it heavily on the rocks beside the spring. There was no scene of stone debris flying, but a low buzzing sound with a strange tremor impacted into the depths of the mountain. This was the mining technique of Duk, performed with vigorous magical power. Several thin cracks suddenly appeared on the rocks beside the spring at the same time, and a stream of water washed the gravel out, doubling the flow of the spring. The wheat seedlings at the foot of the distant mountain were about to head, and it was the time when irrigation was most needed. The original thin mountain stream would not be able to meet the needs of irrigating such a large field. Moses opened the spring to draw more spring water down, which was the last thing he did before leaving his people. That night, the sleeping tribesmen once again heard the voice in their souls. It was not Bakri, but their leader, Moses. "My people, God has summoned me on Mount Sinai, and I will leave with God. Joshua will be your new leader, and the 12 judges will continue to protect the people as they move forward. There are many dangers ahead, but do not give up hope. You will return to your home, build it and protect it. Do not break your promise with God, and most importantly, understand the true meaning of a home." Moses left and never returned, and he ordered Joshua, the oldest of the people, to be the new leader. Taking one last look at the camp of his people from above the clouds, Moses asked, "My God, will I never see them again?" Although close at hand, Amon's voice sounded in his soul, "That's not for sure. If one of them can receive my guidance in the future, you can meet them in the Garden of Eden, and you will be the messenger to guide them. As for the plains of Duk, if one day you no longer worry that Enlil will harm your people, then you can naturally go. You have no agreement with Enlil." Moses asked somewhat doubtfully, "No longer worry that Enlil will harm your people?" Amon said with a faint smile, "Even gods who transcend eternal life will fall. You don't have to think too much for the time being. Just build your own Garden of Eden." 3 days later, Amon appeared with Moses on the majestic rolling mountains of the Siyah Plateau, which was so steep that there was almost no way to climb it. Although it was summer, the wind was cold at high altitudes, and huge glaciers could be seen from time to time on the snowline. The rocks at high altitudes had been eroded by snow and glaciers for many years, and many places were already very brittle, and a large piece of gravel would collapse with a forceful stomp. Not to mention people, even the footprints of animals were hard to see. Between the two huge mountains, there was a vast open area where cold winds blew all year round. The crushed stones were covered with snow that looked like ice crystals. It was extremely desolate as far as the eye could see. Only moss-like plants grew in the dark corners. Occasionally, there were some sparse and strange shrubs in the low-lying areas that were sheltered from the wind. Aman stopped here, and Moses asked in surprise, "Is this the place where the divine palace of Murin is? How can it be so desolate?" Aman explained, "The gods do not have to live on earth, but they will also build palaces on earth for the emissaries who receive guidance to live and train, and when they are injured, they can also recuperate in such a place. The divine palace is invisible to ordinary people unless the door is opened for you to enter, but your current achievements are still a little short of that, and it will be difficult for you to discover its existence. Murin should know that we are coming, and you will be able to see a miracle right away, and in the future, you will also have to create such a miracle for yourself." Before he could finish his sentence, a door suddenly appeared in the wilderness. It was an arched door woven by green ivy. Through this arched door, one could see another strange world. The green grass spread out like a shade, dotted with all kinds of flowers. There were clear streams between the rolling hillsides, and in the distance was a beautiful mountain, and at the foot of the mountain was a gorgeous palace. Aman pulled the stunned Moses through the door, and when Moses looked back in surprise, the ivy-wrapped door had disappeared, and he was standing in a vast, evergreen wilderness. Aman explained again, "This is a space that uses the elemental energy of the plateau and the mountains to operate with magic, like another world. But we are still in the same place, still standing on the Saya Plateau, but this place is separated from the outside world by magic." It was also the first time that Aman had come to the divine palace of the gods, but he had the experience of entering the Ennead in Schrödinger's spiritual imprint, so he was not as surprised as Moses. Murin was a goddess who loved beauty, and her divine palace was filled with beautiful and delicate exotic flowers and plants from all over the continent. The so-called divine palace did not refer to a palace, but to a space like this. Murin was standing by a stream, holding an ivy staff in her hand, wearing a tight golden dress and a crown of flowers on her head. She was smiling at Aman and Moses who were walking in the distance, her elf-maid Shubra standing beside her. Moses also grew up in the town of Duk, and he had entered the shrine of Murin countless times since he was a child. Today, he finally saw a living god for the first time, and it turned out to be such a charming and moving girl. For a moment, he could not connect her with the solemn and cold stone statue on the altar. His feelings were complicated when he saw Murin. The goddess was once the patron saint of the Duk miners, but the town of Duk along with 2,000 people had disappeared in the flood. Now the surviving people no longer believed in the goddess, but Aman had brought him here, and the shrine of Ammonius and Murin had reappeared in the city of Salem. When Aman came, he told Moses that whether he liked her or not, he had to learn to face a god. Moses followed Aman to Murin and finally bowed to her. Aman said with a smile, "You Namna, I have brought Moses, you have won the bet with Enrol." Moses, who had his head lowered, was stunned. He did not expect Aman to address Murin like that, and then he heard the voice of the goddess. "The lost lamb of those years has finally found its grassland, and it is still on the same land. Moses, I want to thank you, and I will guide you to join the Anunnaki divine clan, become an emissary of the gods, and obtain the secret of eternal life." Moses replied, "Thank you, goddess. But I have my God, and I already have the guidance of faith in my heart." Murin glanced at Aman, walked over, put her arm around Aman, and said, "This is just a promise, not a request, and if you change your mind in the future, you can join the Anunnaki divine clan at any time. Since you have no intention of accepting this invitation, why did you come here today?" Moses replied, "First, to thank you in person for making such a promise, although I did not ask for it. Second, to visit your divine palace. My God wants to build his own divine palace, and has ordered me to be in charge of the matters there." Murin said to the elf-maid Shubra, "Show Moses around, and tell him about the mysteries of building a divine palace. But with his achievements, there are still some things that he cannot do." Aman explained, "The place I want to build is called the Garden of Eden, and the most important work will be done by myself. after opening up an independent space, the gardens and palaces in the Divine Palace will still need to be built by the disciples, which will be the place where they will stay and train on earth, and the process of building is also to find the home in their hearts. Shubra led Moses into the distance, and Murin put her cheek against Amon's shoulder and said sweetly, "This is your first time coming to my rose garden, why don't you visit our palace first?" 7 days later, Amon and Moses left Namna's rose garden and flew in the clouds over the Saya plateau. Amon asked, "How do you feel these days in Murin's divine palace?" Moses sighed, "It's really a divine palace on earth. I never even dreamed that there would be such a place. Shubra is beautiful and gentle. I have never seen such a good girl. No matter what I ask, she answers very patiently, and sometimes she personally demonstrates to me." Amon couldn't help but laugh. "I didn't ask you about that, but what did you learn?" Moses sighed again. "I really did not expect that Shubra has already mastered the 9th level of the power of origin, and in the human world, she is equivalent to a god. We also competed in magic power, but it felt strange. Her achievements are much higher than mine, and she has mastered many means that I can't use, but in terms of pure strength, she doesn't exceed me by much, and she is not good at fighting." Amon laughed. Practicing the power of origin, pursuing the realm of endless growth in the human world, and eventually becoming a god who transcends eternal life, is not for the sake of fighting. Power grows with the mind, and talent varies from person to person. Shubra takes care of the rose garden for you, Namna. She is not a warrior, but your experience is different. You've walked this path that I've guided you to this point, and you've encountered so many hardships. Naturally, your magic power is much stronger." Moses asked again, "So in the divine clan, is there an oracle who is particularly good at fighting?" Amon replied, "Of course there is. In the Ennead divine clan, the cat goddess Batet was very good at fighting, and Enril has a subordinate called Bright Moon Knight, who is not only good at assassination, but also has mastered a kind of explosive power of transformation, and is very strong in fighting. You must be careful when you encounter such an opponent. Don't think that everyone is as gentle and cute as Shubra." Moses, "Shubra is the first oracle I have seen with my own eyes. She is good at awakening the power of living beings, with a feeling like a spring breeze." Amon suddenly frowned. "There's a tail." Moses was stunned. "Shubra doesn't have a tail, but her ears are a bit sharp, and the color of her pupils is not quite the same." Amon glared at him. "I didn't say Shubra, there is a tail behind us. We are being followed." Moses looked back subconsciously. "Who would follow us? Why can't I see it?" Amon, "Don't look back. Of course you can't see it. If it wasn't for the shape of a cloud when the wind blew through, even I wouldn't have noticed it. As soon as we came out of Murin's divine technique, we may have been targeted. Don't panic, see who it is, and take him down and ask him what he is trying to do." Amon did not change his speed and continued to fly forward, but quietly took out the shadow-chasing lamp. He had once given this magical artifact to Link, and when the clansmen entered the plains of Duk, he took it back this time. This object came from the collection of the Temple of Isis and was originally kept by High Priest Julian. When Julian sent people to hunt down Amon, he gave it to his men, but it was obtained by Amon. Link had inherited Crazy Ol's crafting skills, and when he took charge of this magical artifact, he had refined it again, and now its tracking effect was even more amazing. But this object was used for tracking after all, and Amon was now being tracked. He quietly took out the shadow-chasing lamp and flew down, making a turn in the air and disappearing behind a huge mountain peak. A gust of wind swirled away, and the invisible tracker also bypassed the mountain peak. After an unknown amount of time, Amon flew back from the other side of the mountain peak with Moses. It turned out that they had made a big circle around the mountain peak and returned to the place where the tracker had passed. The shadow-chasing lamp glowed, and a person appeared in the light. This person was a young man with fair skin and looked very young. His facial features were like perfect marble carvings, but his eyes showed a look of resentment. He wore a robe as soft as clouds and held an emerald green bamboo cane in his hand, the top of which was wrapped with a lifelike snake sculpture. Amon did not know this person, but suddenly remembered seeing this snake Cain in a mural in a certain shrine in the kingdom of Babylon, and he knew who he was. This person was Murin's ex-husband, Dums. Wasn't he sent to the underworld by Murin's messengers? Dum's sister, Peloponnes, had once come to Ammon on his behalf, trying to capture Ammon and send him to the underworld in exchange for Dums, but Murin stopped her. Dums had already escaped from the underworld, so why would he appear here and secretly follow Ammon? Ammon could not help but frown, feeling that things were a little troublesome. He took out a shuttle and a taroculus and handed them to Moses, saying, "Leave this place as soon as possible. Link and Medanzo are still waiting for you in the mountains of the Euphrates Valley. This taroculus records the place you need to go to, and there is also the blueprint of the Garden of Eden inside. I'll come after I settle something." Moses was a little worried and asked, "Who is following you? Don't you need my help?" Ammon shook his head. "I don't need your help. He is Murin's ex-husband, Dums. I'm afraid he has some personal problems to solve with me in private." Moses did not say anything more after hearing this, so he immediately launched the shuttle and flew away. It was Murin's ex-husband who was looking for Ammon. These were personal matters that could not be discussed clearly, so it was better not to ask. At this time, another whirlwind blew out from the mountain peak. Dums also quietly went around, only to see a person suddenly launch the shuttle and flew away, while another person stood high in the sky with his hands behind his back. Dums did not know whether he should immediately chase after them. At this time, he heard Ammon's voice. "Dums, why did you chase me all the way here? What's the matter?" Chapter 205. 188. Snake Guide. Ammon shook his head very frankly. "I don't know you. I've only seen the snake staff in your hand in the mural in the shrine. The god Dums painted on the mural doesn't look like you at all. It's very ugly, but the snake staff is the same." Dums approached slowly and pointed the snake staff at Ammon. "Since you know me, how dare you speak like this? Do you know who I am?" Ammon continued to shake his head. "I didn't know before. I thought you were a god, but later I learned that you are a demigod who has mastered the 9th level, a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan, but I still don't know what you do. I only know that you were once the husband of Murin. We have never dealt with each other. Why are you looking for me?" Dums shouted. "You still have the face to mention Murin in front of me. We have never dealt with each other, but that doesn't mean there is no hatred between you and me. If you want to blame someone, blame her. It's all Murin's fault." Ammon kept shaking his head. "I have nothing to blame Murin for. I just came out of Murin's divine palace, and I didn't hear that she caused any trouble." The resentment in Dum's eyes grew stronger, and he said angrily, "You came out of Murin's divine palace? Do you know where I came from?" Ammon finally nodded. "I know, you came out of Queen Kella's underworld. Congratulations on your successful escape. Last time, your sister Peloponnes came to me, just to save you, and it seems that she really did." As soon as Ammon mentioned the name Peloponnes, Dum seemed to be provoked by something, and he shouted angrily, "It was you who caused her to suffer in the underworld." Waving the bamboo staff in his hand, countless shadows and dust-like mist appeared in the air, quickly condensing into a 100-foot-long giant snake, which opened its mouth and pounced towards Ammon. Before the giant snake even got close, the air was filled with the smell of blood, mixed with a strange fragrance. This smell was poisonous and could make people fall into a trance. Ammon had long been on guard. An invisible spatial force isolated the invasion of the poisonous aura. He waved his hand in the air and summoned the Eye of Sealing. He swung it forward fiercely, and a huge cross-shaped sword appeared in the air and slashed at the snake. The surrounding space seemed to shrink and collapse towards a single point. A force pushed everything towards the center. The cross-shaped longsword and the giant serpent's light and shadow were crushed and annihilated at the same time, as if they had disappeared into the collapsed space. Dums was also pushed forward by the power of space contraction, his hair flying and his long robe dancing. He gripped his bamboo staff and stabilized his body in the air, appearing both elegant and mighty. However, he immediately thought that something was wrong and hurriedly shook his bamboo staff again. The snake sculpture on the staff suddenly came to life, transforming into a flying snake that rapidly expanded in the air and coiled around him, opening its mouth to bite. This time it was not an illusory snake made of magic power, but a real snake. Amon did not put on a stance like him, taking out his staff and fighting elegantly across the air. At the moment when the space collapsed, Amon's figure was also pushed forward. He took advantage of the momentum and flew forward, passing through the sword and the giant serpent that had just been shattered, and suddenly shot out amidst the chaotic aura, swinging his fist towards Dum's face. As a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan for many years, Dums had never seen such a fighting style at all. Amon did not look like a high and mighty god. This was simply a street fight in the mortal world. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and struck out with the spirit snake staff that he had refined for many years and was connected to his mind. If Amon was bitten by this snake, no matter how strong his soul was, his physical body would be paralyzed for a moment, and he would fall directly from the clouds. If he was entangled by the snake, then the power of his soul would also be imprisoned, and he would be captured alive by Dums. If it were any other god, no one would be willing to fight in such a way, and they would definitely fly back and then get into a stance to calmly use all kinds of means. But Amon didn't dodge at all. As soon as the snake flew out, he arrived. With a flip of his wrist, his fist turned into a golden palm, and he grabbed the snake's head. The edge of his palm barely grazed the snake's fangs. He held the snake's upper and lower jaws together, and at the same time, grabbed the snake's body with his other hand. This spirit snake was connected to Dum's body and soul, and as soon as it was caught, Dum's face turned green, and he channeled his magic power in horror. The spirit snake's reaction was extremely fast, and while its head and neck were caught, it flicked its tail and wrapped around Amon's body, preparing to twist it tightly. At first, Dums wanted to capture Amon alive, but he did not expect the situation to become so dangerous in an instant, and he immediately wanted to strangle Amon on the spot. Amon was faster than the spirit snake, and he clenched his hands and twisted them hard. With a series of crisp sounds, the spirit snake that wrapped around him turned into a green light and exploded. Amon's clothes instantly turned into flying ash, and the snake scale armor on his body was charred and damaged in many places. This spirit snake was formed by the snake staff, and after being strangled by Amon, it returned to the snake sculpture form and appeared on Dum's bamboo staff, but Dum's spiritual power, which had been refined for many years, was greatly damaged, and he almost lost control of his body. But the impact on Amon was much greater than that of Dum's. Dums was damaged because his mind was connected to the spirit snake, and this spirit snake had wrapped around Amon's body and exploded. Whether it was the elemental summoning or the power of spatial transfer, they were all shattered into chaos, and Amon could no longer control his body to continue flying, and he would fall heavily to the ground. Of course, Dums was aware of this, and there was a trace of a contemptuous smile on his pale face. He waved his staff and was ready to use another method to capture Amon, who was about to fall. However, before he could lift his staff, he shouted in surprise, and with both hands holding the staff, he pushed it forward with all his strength. It turned out that Amon, under the huge impact and unable to control the flight of the divine spell, actually flew up and kicked him in the chest. The series of changes just now was complicated, but it all happened in the blink of an eye. Amon swooped down from the air, grabbed the snake, and crushed it. The huge impact made him lose control of the magic, but his body still flew forward due to inertia. The golden light on his hands was shattered, and both his arms were instantly numb and sore, but he twisted his waist and raised his foot before he was about to fall. Dums was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. How could the gods fight like this? Was the person in front of him Amunius on the altar, or a wild man in the marketplace? At the moment when his mind was attacked, he could not use any powerful divine spell, and could only use his strong physical strength to hold the staff to block. With a muffled bang, Amon's foot stepped right in the middle of the bamboo staff. The power of this foot could even break the city gate, but the bamboo staff was amazingly tough, and after a violent tremor, it was still intact. Amon used the force to do a somersault, and was thrown into the sky by the rebound force. Dum's body trembled as he flew down, and he was in a trance for a few times. Sometimes he was fast like a shadow, and then he would freeze in the air for a moment, and then he would fly down like a shadow. After flashing a few times, he was already standing on the hillside below. Dums was kicked down by Amon. Fortunately, he was kicked in the air, and there was no support in the air, so he did not completely rely on his body to resist. After Dums landed on the ground, his hair was flying, and his clothes were not disheveled. He looked much calmer than Amon, and he waved the bamboo staff towards the sky to condense his magic power. He wanted to stand on the ground and attack the falling Amon. If Amon could recover his flying ability at this moment, he would be smart enough to run away quickly. But Amon did not waste his magic power to control his body at all. After he somersaulted and was bounced into the air, he fell down like a stone. In the air, there were countless green smoke and fog, and it was about to condense into a snake shadow to entangle him. However, Dum's sneer suddenly changed, because he saw Amon's movements clearly. Amon turned in the air and fell in a parabola. He had already taken out a bow, and when he landed on the ground, he just happened to draw the bow. There was a sound like thousands of wild bulls roaring in all directions, and a force that attacked the soul firmly locked onto Dums. Amon did not care where he fell, and he just gathered his magic power and pointed at Dums without blinking. The bow in his hand was Gilgamesh's divine bow. When the bow was drawn, Amon just landed, and smoke and dust rose from his feet. He stepped on a huge rock, and half of it collapsed. He knelt on one leg in the gravel. In the air, countless illusionary green snakes of light had already formed. Dums could attack Amon with a wave of his staff, but at the same time, it meant that he would have to resist Amon's arrow. He had a flash of hesitation, but Amon did not hesitate. The bowstring was loosened, and dozens of shadows rippled in the spine of the bow, making a sound like rolling waves. The arrow he shot was not on the bowstring. There was a sharp whistle in the air, and a cross-shaped sword shot straight at Dums. Amon shot the Eye of Sealing. This sword had just been thrown out by him and turned into a long sword of 100 feet to kill the giant snake. The space collapsed and shrank, and the shadow of the giant sword was also shattered and disappeared. Then, it turned back into an ordinary long sword and fell from the sky. At this time, Dums and Amon had already landed. Amon drew the bow when he fell, but his power pulled the Eye of Sealing in the air, and when he landed, it just happened to be shot. Dums no longer had time to attack Amon. With a wave of his staff, the shadow of the snake condensed in midair instantly burst into rays of green light and wrapped around the Eye of Sealing. With a sharp roar, the Eye of Sealing pierced through the curtains of light and was slowed down. Dums took the opportunity to fall to the ground and roll, his figure turning into a golden snake glowing with green light and escaping. The golden snake sprang up along the treetops, turned into a ray of green light and flew away in the air. He actually escaped. As a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan, Dums had long achieved the 9th level. His magic power was not weak, his means were not superb, and the snake staff in his hand was also extremely magical. But he made a terrible mistake today, and that was that he did not understand his opponent Amon at all. He had stayed in the underworld for too long and did not fully understand the changes that had taken place outside. Even if he knew a little, he would probably not bother to study a mortal like Amon. In his mind, Amon was nothing more than a lowly Duk miner. Although he had achieved a high level, it had only been a few years. How could he compare to a high and mighty god like him? He thought that as soon as he appeared, he would be able to subdue Amon, and without the protection of Murin, this brat could only obediently submit. Unexpectedly, Amon was not afraid at all. Not only that, but he was also terrifyingly calm. Amon looked at Dums as if he was looking at a street performer playing with a snake, but when he really made a move, he was not careless at all, and he did not care what tricks Dums used, nor did he care what habits the gods had when they fought. He fought completely according to his own way. Although he was not afraid of Dums, when he attacked, it was as if he was on the battlefield facing a life-and-death situation, and he even used a flying kick. There was one thing that Dums could never have imagined. Although Amon was only a young man in his early 20s, he had the same state of mind as the cat goddess Batet. Dums' feeling was anger at first, then shock, then hatred, and then fear. At such a close distance, The eye of sealing that Aman shot with Gilgamesh's divine bow was too frightening. If he was hit by this arrow, even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Even if his attack could also seriously injure Aman at the same time, what was the point? How could Aman's life be more important than his own safety? He could not stand this kind of fighting, and it was not worth risking his life to fight with this brat. It was better to run away quickly. Anyway, there would be other ways to deal with Aman later. As soon as the golden snake turned into a green light and flew away, the eye of sealing pierced through a curtain of light and inserted itself into the place where Dums had just stood, and then it was pulled out by a hand. Seeing that Dums was running away, Aman stomped his feet and flew over, pulling out his sword and also flying into the sky, shouting, "Dums, stop. I haven't finished talking. Who caused Peloponnes to suffer in the underworld? Tell me clearly." How could Dums listen to him? He continued to fly in the air, and Aman chased after him with the eye of sealing in his hand. After chasing for an unknown amount of time, the mountains gradually lowered, and they were almost at the edge of the Saya Plateau. Another huge mountain range appeared in the distance, the last barrier through the Saya Plateau to the plains of Duk. The mountains were high and rugged, and lush jungles grew halfway up the mountains, and the mountains were full of large and small cracks and caves. Dums turned into a green light and suddenly accelerated towards the mountainside. He was probably forced by Aman and wanted to hide in this huge mountain range. If Aman was not careful and did not lock onto his position, it would be almost impossible to find him in such a mountain. Aman flew down from the sky and pounced towards the mountainside, but he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He should have sped up to keep a close eye on Demusid, but he stopped and watched as Demusid disappeared from his detection range. He had chased him for so long, but he stopped just like that. It was surprising. Aman frowned and seemed to be thinking, then suddenly turned around and swung his sword again, as if cutting a passage in space. His figure disappeared from where he was, and in a blur of light and shadow, he appeared hundreds of feet away in an instant. At the place where he disappeared, a scroll fell down. It spun and unfolded, and an invisible force surged out. Aman gave up the chase, suddenly left his foothold, and unfolded a high-level scroll. This series of actions was simply inexplicable, and he did not find any danger. The most precious scroll Aman once had was, of course, Tiamat's Wrath. Of the 3 scrolls left behind by Nero alone, the other 2 were spatial turbulence and information annihilation. Relying on those 2 scrolls and Osiris Rib, Aman was able to escape from Kela's underworld. It was difficult to find a master scroll maker like Nero in the world, and although Aman later had many more scrolls, he could no longer find anything comparable to spatial turbulence or information annihilation. What he unfolded at the moment was a high-level message magic scroll called Eye of Destruction, which could instantly destroy the camouflage of all kinds of message magic, and at the same time cause the space to become chaotic, making it difficult for anyone to detect. This was a very precious scroll, and although its effect could not be compared to information annihilation, it was already the best message magic scroll Aman currently had. Since the battle with the Uruk Legion, Aman had never used a scroll again, and even gave most of the scrolls in his hand to his disciples, leaving only a few for himself. On the one hand, it was because he had never encountered a situation of life and death again, and on the other hand, after mastering the 8th level of the power of origin, scrolls had become less and less useful to him. The advantage of scrolls was that they could perform various magic without consuming their own magic, but it took time to unfold the scroll, and the user also needed to control the attack range and direction of the magic. Although this time was extremely short, for the top masters in the world, it was often enough to determine victory or defeat or life and death. For example, in the face of an opponent like Enkidu, there was no time to use the scroll in a fierce battle. Even if the average person could unfold the scroll, with Enkidu's reaction and speed, he could dodge out of the attack range of the scroll in time. After all, it was not an instantaneous magic that the user could control at will. Moreover, powerful attack scrolls also had a drawback, which was that it was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe when used in a chaotic battle, and it was often easy to cause accidental injuries. But today, Aman suddenly used the scroll again, and the range of the attack was the place where he was just standing. He took out such a precious scroll just to take a look. Because he felt that something was wrong, he suddenly realized that there was a possibility that Dums deliberately wanted to lead him to this place during his escape. If the fierce battle just now was a normal exchange, of course, Dums would have lost. But if it was a life and death battle, Dums did not lose the ability to fight back, and his strength was completely capable of continuing to fight with Amon. He might have escaped because he was frightened by Amon, or he was unwilling to fight with his life. If that was the case, he should have disappeared as quickly as possible, but Dums did not. Amon was not superior to Dums in every way. At least Dums' speed in the air was quite fast, much faster than the wind shuttle. He rolled on the mountainside, transformed into a golden snake, and then turned into a green light and flew up. The eye of ceiling shot by Amon did not hit him, and if he escaped at the same speed, Amon would not be able to catch up with him. But after flying in the air, his speed slowed down, just enough for Amon's detection magic to lock on from a distance, and he chased all the way. Maybe he was tired, or maybe his instantaneous escape was just a kind of explosive skill, just like the speed of a short-distance sprint and long-distance attack were impossible. But when Amon chased near the mountain, Dums suddenly accelerated in the air and directly pounced on the mountainside, which meant that Dums could have flown even faster just now. If Dums really wanted to escape, he would have already escaped Amon's pursuit. Why did he delay until now and then accelerate? He almost couldn't escape. Amon was surprised and thought of a possibility. Dums was very confident in his speed, and he could guarantee that Amon would not catch up halfway, but deliberately led him to a prepared place. Whether this was possible or not, Amon's mind was determined, and he immediately stopped chasing. Then he flashed to another position and threw out the Eye of Destruction. He never felt the pain of using scrolls, and he was straightforward and efficient. Whether there was an ambush or not, and where the ambush was, he first made sure that there was no problem around him. This is the last night of the month, and it is very difficult to break through the list. I hereby ask for a conclusion. Chapter 206. 189. Gorgeous turned the Eye of Destruction was not an offensive divine spell. The scroll disappeared and turned into a transparent wave of air that spread quickly in the air. About 30 paces away from where Amon had just stood, a figure suddenly appeared. This person held a gray-white spike in his hand, and his body was bent like a fully drawn bow, ready to shoot out at any time to launch an attack. Amon was taken aback. He knew this person. It was Bright Moon Knight, who had tried to assassinate him in the charcoal marsh. Bright Moon Knight was the best opponent Amon had ever encountered. Just now, Amon had been closely locking on to the escaping Dums, and his attention was all drawn to the front. He did not expect Bright Moon Knight to have already lurked so close in midair. No matter how good a stealth skill was, it would still expose one's figure when one attacked, but the closer one was, the more sudden the attack was, and the greater the threat. Even Amon would find it difficult to defend against a full-force attack from a master like Bright Moon Knight at such a close distance. Fortunately, his reaction was alert and he did not make any mistakes. Bright Moon Knight was obviously on the same side as Dums. Dums failed to subdue Amon, so he lured him to this place. When Amon flew past, Bright Moon Knight could launch a fatal blow. He was already ready and was about to attack, but Amon suddenly stopped and then disappeared. An Eye of Destruction was opened, revealing his figure in midair. Bright Moon Knight was even more surprised than Amon. His first reaction was that the matter had been exposed, and Amon had long been prepared to deal with him. Amon did not give him time to think carefully. As soon as he saw Bright Moon Knight appear, he immediately let out a low shout and flew over from 100 paces away. Before he arrived, a series of crisp sounds came from all the joints in his body, and a violent aura spread out. Bright Moon Knight's appearance here surprised Amon very much, because he knew this assassin's powerful transformation skill. Today wasn't a full moon night, but rather a dim one. Right now, it was daytime and the sun was shining brightly. It was the most disadvantageous time for the moonlit night transformation. And according to John's judgment, Mingyu Yi would need to rest for at least half a year before he could fully recover to his peak state. For an assassin like him, there was a limit to assassinating top experts, otherwise it would be too terrifying. But even if Bright Moon Knight did not use the Berserk strength transformation skill, she was still a calm and terrifying assassin. The most important thing in an assassination was to catch the enemy off guard. Amon did not expect to encounter Bright Moon Knight at this time and place. From this point of view, this assassin was very successful, but unfortunately he was accidentally exposed. Mingyu Yi would make a move at this time and place. On one hand, it was to catch Amon off guard. On the other hand, if she dared to make trouble again before she had recovered to her peak state, it must be because she had Dum's help. It was tricky and dangerous to deal with such two experts at the same time, so Amon's first reaction was to get rid of Bright Moon Knight before Dums came back to attack, so he immediately entered the Berserk state, which could make his reaction speed and strength the strongest in a short period of time. Using the Berserk power was not without a price. Once he entered this state, the enhancement of one power would also limit other powers. Amon could no longer use the Flight Divine spell and would fall from the sky. But before he entered the Berserk state, he had already flown up, shooting in front of Bright Moon Knight at an extremely fast speed and slashing down with the Eye of Sealing. The sharp sword with a dazzling golden light could even cut a small mountain in half. The powerful pressure and explosive energy had locked Bright Moon Knight in midair, and the assassin had become the attacked. Bright Moon Knight waved his spikes in panic to block, and the spikes formed a shock wave that surrounded his body with a long howl. The sword light slashed on the spikes and disappeared into thin air, then shot out not far behind him, as if it was inexplicably shielded by space and then reappeared. Bright Moon Knight's magic power was not weak, and he was also good at using magic skills in combat, so he barely blocked Amon's powerful sword. His body trembled and floated downwards, and he was cut down from the sky by Amon's sword. Amon did not give him a chance to breathe, and followed him down from the sky with another slash. Bright Moon Knight could only raise his spikes to block as he fell, and the sword light and the spikes collided again. His body, which had just stabilized, accelerated again. Amon swung his sword down in the air, with an almost crazy power, and each slash was ruthless and accurate. Bright Moon Knight was really a ruthless character, blocking repeatedly as he was chased down from the sky. The two were like two meteors that kept colliding as they flew towards the foot of the mountain. Mingyu Yi landed with a loud bang, causing a large patch of trees in the forest to fly and creating a deep pit in the ground. Before he could jump out of the pit, Amon had already landed and stood on the edge of the huge pit, swinging his sword again. No matter how fast Bright Moon Knight's movements were, it was too late to get out of the pit at this moment, and as long as there was the slightest flaw in his defense, he would probably be cut in two by Amon's sword. He waved his spikes, but his movements were not very slow. He blocked back and forth with a long howl and shockwaves, protecting his entire body from head to toe. He shouted, "Demuzid, what are you still dawdling about for?" At this time, a blue light shot out from the mountainside where Dums had just landed, heading straight for the fierce battle between the two. Dums' voice shouted, "Didn't you boast that your stealth skills are unparalleled in the world? How did you get exposed? I haven't lured this brat into the trap yet." Bright Moon Knight roared angrily, "There must be something wrong with you that let him see the flaw." Bright Moon Knight was already in a difficult battle, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he had been injured by Amon's wild slashes. He had not fully recovered his strength, and was fighting with Amon in a very disadvantageous situation, and had already suffered a lot. But at this moment, the tone of his conversation with Dums showed that he did not take Amon seriously. Perhaps in the eyes of these two people, after forming a pincer attack, they would definitely be able to win. Amon did not speak, and just as Dums was about to arrive, he suddenly turned his hand and slashed at himself. The sword light fell close to his back, and he instantly turned around. This turn was too strange, too beautiful, and beyond the imagination of ordinary people. He turned around, but he was still facing the same place, because what appeared now was the two-faced and four-armed Amon, and this turn had turned into another two arms and a face. Holding the Eye of Sealing, Amon still stood at the edge of the large pit and slashed out with sword lights, making it impossible for Bright Moon Knight to escape. The violent power cut the hard rock formation deep underground into dust. The flying gravel also became a sharp weapon, hitting the shock wave of Bright Moon Knight's body with a constant buzzing sound, and the bottom of the large pit had already turned into powder. Turning around, Aman held Gilgamesh's divine bow, pulled back the bowstring, and shot an arrow at the flying blue light. This time it was not a tangible arrow, but a pure energy. The bowstring sounded and it was instantly released, and no matter how fast Dums was, he could not avoid it. With a bang, the blue light exploded not far away, and Dums' figure appeared. He held the bamboo staff in his hand and exclaimed, "How can you do this?" Aman, who was facing the bright moon, was in a state of berserk, his hair flying in the wind and his gaze, while An, who had turned around to face Demuzid, had a calm expression, and there was not even a trace of anger in his voice as he replied lightly, "This is the realm that I have verified." Similarly, there are also differences between the 9 levels, and the me that you are facing can be called Allah. Aman's use of this method was beyond Dum's expectations. This was not a phantom created by using message magic, nor was it a transformation magic to change his appearance. Both Yun had verified realms, had a complete personality identity, and even the magic power they cultivated and the means they were good at were not the same. To use an inappropriate analogy, it was like a person dealing with different people in the world with different identities. This was the realm of cultivation after having the 9th level achievement of endless arising, and it was a breakthrough after having stronger magic power and more profound knowledge. No one taught Aman, and Aman comprehended it on his own after revealing his face to Moses on Mount Sinai. It was as if another pair of eyes had opened in the dark. Did the cultivation of the power of the origin have to go through this process? What Aman did not know was that although this method was magical, it also had a price. Each complete identity had to be cultivated to the peak of the 9th level achievement and integrated without hindrance. Only then could one take the final step to transcend the realm of immortality. The changes shown by Aman at the moment were also related to the power of 2 sides he had once cultivated. After comprehending the power of the origin, Aman had understood that the true path did not have 2 sides, but after all, he had such an experience in his own cultivation and had insights that others did not have. At this moment, Aman was like a 9th level supreme warrior fighting with a sword against a moonlit night, or a 9th level supreme mage confronting Dums with a divine bow in hand, and the 2 identities could also borrow strength from each other. Demuzid shouted in exasperation, "Did Murin teach you that? Did she break her oath?" Aman sneered, "Why do you always think so? You can't learn this realm without understanding it. It's not like reading or writing. When the day comes when you can really understand it, you don't need anyone to teach you. Poor God Dums, you have lived these hundreds of years in vain." Dums' face was livid. "How dare you laugh at me?" Aman curled his lips. "You are asking to be humiliated. I have no interest in you at all, and I never wanted to have any dealings with you. It was you who came looking for me." The 2 of them didn't hesitate in the slightest as they spoke. The bowstring in Aman's hand moved continuously, and a series of arrows condensed from invisible energy appeared and shot towards Demuzid from all directions. Dums waved his bamboo staff, and the world seemed to be filled with a sizzling sound, which made people's bones numb, and the invisible energy arrows were dispersed one by one. The bamboo staff in his hand also split into green light, like dancing electric snakes attacking Aman. The bowstring in Aman's hand trembled so fast that the bowstring could not be seen clearly, and there were flashes of light bursting in front of him, constantly scattering the flying electric snakes. He had gradually entered a defensive position, and the number of arrows actively attacking Dums was decreasing. Using doppelgangers to deal with 2 people at the same time, Aman was still not good enough, and it seemed impossible for him to win. If the fight dragged on, he would definitely lose. And when Mingyu saw that Dums was already fighting with Aman, he roused his spirits and roared, his figure growing out of thin air and transforming into a fierce half-man half-wolf. Under Aman's sword attacks, the large pit had become a terrifying world of rubble, smoke, and sword rays. He could not hold on with his injuries, and in a very unfavorable environment, he also entered a state of rage. Although his injuries might worsen afterwards, at this moment, He wanted to get rid of Amon first. Hearing the roar and a series of thunderous sounds coming from behind Amon, Dums knew that Ming Yuyi had gone all out. His expression became calm again and he said with a sneer, "Amon, you really have some skills, you even dare to chase me, but you alone are no match for both of us. Hurry up and surrender, you can still live if you fall into my hands, but if you let Ming Yuyi deal with you, he will definitely kill you." Amon suddenly laughed and said unhurriedly to Dums, "You escaped quite quickly just now, but have you forgotten that I can also escape? I admire your speed. If I escape, you will definitely be able to catch up, but do you dare to chase me alone? The reason why I haven't escaped yet is because I want to ask clearly. You said that Peloponnes is suffering in the underworld. What is going on?" Amon's words made Dums choke, and he forgot to answer for a moment. Yes, Amon could also escape. If he could not win, he could just turn around and fly away. Ming Yuyi was already injured and could not fly in a state of rage. Once he ended his state of rage, he would become very weak, and his injuries would become more serious, so it was impossible for him to catch up with Amon. Dum's speed was very fast, but would he dare to chase after Amon alone? If Amon could not beat them, he could escape. The reason why he had not escaped until now was because he wanted to ask clearly. Demuzid was taken aback and was about to say something when the scene changed again. There were originally countless scattered winds and twisted shadows in the air, but at this moment, they were suddenly drawn by a force, condensing into long, solid ivy vines, densely entangling towards Dums. Someone had arrived, and suddenly attacked Dums. Dums let out a strange cry, and could not care about attacking Amon. Countless rays of green light exploded from his bamboo staff, shattering the ivy vines in the air. He stomped his feet and was about to fly away when a huge hammer with a long handle suddenly appeared in the air, smashing down with traces of electricity. The bamboo staff in Dum's hand transformed into a huge long staff, blocking the huge hammer head-on with a deafening roar. The illusion of the long staff was shattered, and he used the force to fly back in another direction. At the same time, he waved a green blade to cut away the ivy vines blocking his way. This boy's reaction was really fast when he escaped. But someone had long been prepared for this. When he rushed out of the ivy vines, a large green net suddenly unfolded in front of him. This net was also woven from vines, and there were fresh leaves on it. The edges of the leaves were sharp like short knives. Dums hit the net and cursed inwardly. He wanted to turn into a golden snake and escape, but it was too late. The net seemed to have a mind of its own. It immediately shrank and wrapped him in it, and he fell heavily to the ground. 3 people came out of the forest, and in the middle was Murin's elf maid, Shubra. On the left was a strong man in leather armor with bare arms, holding a long-handled hammer. He was the divine emissary guided by Murin, named Taku. On the right was a middle-aged man with a beard, wearing a white robe, named Shera. Like Taku, he was also the divine emissary guided by Murin. Murin had been a god who transcended eternal life for many years. She had her own divine palace of Murin, and there were many shrines in various places on the continent, as well as several independent small divine realms. After so many years, it was impossible for her not to guide others. Shera and Taku were her most capable divine emissaries. 2 days ago, Amon had met these two in the divine palace of Murin. Taku was once a supreme warrior, and now he had achieved the 8th level of the power of origin. And Shera was once a supreme mage in the kingdom of Babylon. Fortunately, he was taken into the Anunnaki divine clan by Murin, and now he also had achieved the 8th level of the power of origin. As soon as Amon saw these 3 people, he realized one thing. Dums had targeted him outside the divine palace of Murin, and Murin was probably aware of it and sent these 3 divine emissaries to meet him. As a result, they arrived at this time and captured Dums, who was the most difficult to catch. Amon put away his bow and asked, "Why are you here?" Shera lifted the vine net that had shrunk into a ball on the ground and shook it, and Dum's figure was revealed again, but his body was wrapped in yellow-green ropes. These ropes must have been transformed from the vine net, and could lock down Dum's transformation and power. Dum's face was extremely ugly. Shubra replied, The goddess found that Dums had appeared near the rose garden and was afraid that something might have happened, so she asked the three of us to rush over to see how you were doing. I didn't expect him to collude with Bright Moon Knight to set a trap to try to deal with you. But your means are superb, and you don't need our help. It's just that this Dums is very slippery, and we took the opportunity to take him down. Since he wants to kill you, I'll leave him to you. Taku said with a giant hammer in his hand. Dums is good at transformation, and his flying speed is extremely fast. Once he escapes, it will be difficult to catch up. The last time the goddess wanted to take him down and send him to the underworld, she also sent the three of us to ambush him on his path and gave us this entangling vine net. Otherwise, we really wouldn't have been able to catch him. Today it's much easier, and we tied him up as soon as we made our move. While they were talking here, Amon and Bright Moon Knight were still fighting fiercely on the other side of the giant pit. He nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Wait a moment, I'll subdue that werewolf first." Taku shook his giant hammer. "Do you need our help?" Amon shook his head. "No need, I know his strength and I want to keep him alive to ask some questions." After speaking, he turned around, and the two faces and 4 arms merged into one. He put away the eye of sealing and jumped into the pit with a roar, fiercely pouncing on Bright Moon Knight, his fists emitting a dazzling golden light again. At this time, Bright Moon Knight was already an arrow at the end of its flight, struggling to swing the spike straight at Amon's chest. Amon caught the spike with a wave of his hand and swung it hard, swinging his body into the air and throwing him to the edge of the pit. Bright Moon Knight flew out and smashed a large part of the edge of the pit. Amon let out a roar and pounced on him in the smoke and dust, waving his fists and wrestling him. After the smoke and dust cleared, Shubra and the others looked into the pit and saw that Bright Moon Knight had returned to his normal appearance, his clothes torn and his hair disheveled. He was beaten black and blue by Amon, lying on the ground unable to move. Chapter 207. Why did Mumaz come looking for trouble with Amon? And how did he get out of the underworld? Things had to start from the beginning. His background was different from that of Amon. His sister, Peloponnes, was guided by Ea, the god of wisdom, very early on and became an emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan, helping Ea to create the word, God, on earth. Some of the habits of the Anunnaki gods were different from those of the Igut Ennead. The Ennead of Igut built a very large Ennead palace together for the emissaries to live and train in, while the gods of the Anunnaki tended to build their own divine palaces. Peloponnes was not good at fighting with others, and her temper was peaceful and gentle. It was said that she could make the breeze and the mountain springs produce melodious sounds like songs, and Ea's divine palace was the most beautiful. Peloponnes also had the 9th level of the power of origin, and was known as the goddess Peloponnes, and it was said that she was the one closest to the gods among the emissaries. At her request, Ea agreed to guide Dums to join the Anunnaki divine clan, but this was only a kind of permission, and the secret of the power of origin was taught to Dums by Peloponnes, not Ea. Dums was a famous handsome boy in the Anunnaki divine clan, and he learned the secret of becoming a god with almost no hardship. He was able to train in the most beautiful divine palace on earth and received the most careful guidance. He was handsome and proud, and the power he trained was also very strong. The bamboo staff in his hand was once a relic of Tiamat's ship. When Tiamat fell in the battle of the gods, the bamboo staff became Ea's trophy, and Ea gave it to Peloponnes, and Peloponnes gave it to Dums. The snake carving on the bamboo staff contained a part of Tiamat's spiritual imprint, which turned out to be the experience of a snake. This imprint was also a cultivation secret of a strange divine technique. By refining this bamboo stick and becoming one with one's mind, one would be able to grasp this mysterious technique. Not only would one be able to transform into a snake, but they would also be able to use all kinds of powerful techniques. This was a small part of the secret that Tiamat had mastered. Back then, she was able to guide monsters like Humbaba, so it was not surprising that there was such a secret in her spiritual imprint. As the god of wisdom, Ea had long since transcended eternal life and was not interested in this kind of secret. Peloponnes did not want to cultivate this divine art either. Dums, on the other hand, spent 100 years to refine the bamboo stick. Not only did he refine it with his mind, but he also learned this mystical secret and obtained a powerful weapon. Although Dums was very powerful, his means were not as ruthless as Murin. At that time, Murin was furious and sent 3 oracles with the entangling vine net to set up an ambush, capture Dums in one fell swoop, and send him to the underworld of Queen Kella. Peloponnes went to find Ammon because Ammon had entered the underworld. Peloponnes thought that Ammon should be responsible for being trapped in the underworld and should not let Dums suffer for him. As a result, when she went to find Ammon, she was stopped by Murin. Ammon told Peloponnes that he was not replaced by Dums, but that he had escaped from the underworld on his own. If Peloponnes wanted to save Dums, she should go to Kella herself. Peloponnes went to the underworld. The queen of the underworld, Kella, was known to be not to be trifled with. Even Murin was somewhat afraid of her and would never deal with her unless it was necessary. Peloponnes begged for a long time, and Queen Kella finally nodded and agreed to release Dums, but at the same time put forward a condition: unless Peloponnes could replace Dums with another god to serve in the underworld. The so-called gods of Kella were not really gods who had transcended eternal life, but oracles who had passed the test of endless life. Peloponnes had no choice but to replace Dums in the underworld with herself. After leaving the underworld, Dums had always wanted to find Ammon. He also thought that the matter was caused by Ammon, and the person who should really be responsible should be Ammon. He wanted to catch Ammon and replace Peloponnes. It was not easy to catch Ammon. Ammon was already the head of the Enyaira Legion at that time and later became the supreme general of the empire, staying in the Ennead divine realm of Igut. Not long ago, Ammon left Igut and entered the plains of Duk. He withdrew to Lung and built the shrine of Murin, but at the same time worshipped Murin and Ammonius, and held a ceremony to summon the gods to descend. Dums heard the news in the divine palace of Ea, and it was Bright Moon Night who came to the divine palace to recuperate from his injuries. Among the various divine palaces of the Anunnaki gods, the one with the most suitable environment for recuperating from injuries was the divine palace of Ea. Dums confirmed 3 things. First, Ammon had left Igut and come to the Anunnaki divine realm. Second, Ammon also had the 9th level achievement of the power of origin. Third, Ammon had won the favor of Murin. At the thought of Peloponnes still suffering in the underworld while Ammon was living so freely, how could Dums not be furious? He picked up his bamboo staff and immediately wanted to go find Ammon, but was dissuaded by Bright Moon Night. Bright Moon Night told Dums that he had fought with Ammon, and not only did he not gain the upper hand, but he had also escaped with injuries. Dums was probably not a match for Ammon alone. Moreover, Ammon's whereabouts were very secretive, and there was always a group of very powerful helpers around him. It was not easy to catch him, so he could only find an opportunity to strike when he was alone. This ambush was planned by Bright Moon Night. The King of Killers thought that Ammon would definitely go in and out of the divine palace of Murin, and it was not convenient for him to have too many subordinates around him. So he waited quietly near the divine palace of Murin, and he would definitely find the best opportunity. Dums listened to Bright Moon Knight's suggestion, but he did not believe that Ammon was so powerful. How could a person who had just passed the test of endless arising and ceasing cycle compare to him? Dums was very proud, and he had never lost to anyone except Murin, so he decided to take down Ammon himself and send him directly to the underworld. Bright Moon Knight's persuasion was useless, and she could only say to Dums, "If you want to go alone, I will not stop you, but if you are not a match for him, we should make a backup plan. I will set a trap at the edge of the Assyrian plateau, and you will definitely be able to fall into it, so we will lure him there. When he falls into the trap, we will take the opportunity to strike outside, and he will definitely not be able to escape. My current injury has not fully recovered, so this is the best choice." Bright Moon Night was the best at ambush and assassination in the Anunnaki divine clan, and according to his suggestion, Dums really intercepted Ammon, but he could not resist Ammon, who was fighting desperately. Only then did he remember that Bright Moon Night had a backup plan, so he hurriedly escaped. He deliberately slowed down to lure Ammon into the trap, but did not expect Ammon to see that something was wrong at the critical moment, and forced out the hidden Bright Moon Night. This was what happened. Regarding the situation of the goddess Peloponnes, it was Murin's 3 subordinates who told Ammon, and the rest was said by Bright Moon Night. Ammon did find a trap between the cliffs of the mountain ahead, and it was very cleverly arranged. If he really accidentally followed Dums and fell onto the hillside, he would definitely not have a good end. The heart of the trap was a very hidden small formation, and if it was not touched, there was almost no abnormality. It required a lot of magic power to detonate in an instant, and only a few stones were blown away, but it made use of the structure of the mountain. Above the trap was a cliff that extended thousands of feet outwards, full of cracks and holes, and the rock layer was very weathered. If a hole suddenly exploded in the mountainside, this side of the mountain wall would collapse. In order to prevent Ammon from escaping, this formation had another function, which was to instantly connect all the power of the collapsed mountain wall into one, firmly imprisoning the space where Ammon was standing. When the trap detonated, Bright Moon Night and Dums worked together to block it, and no matter how capable Ammon was, it would be difficult for him to escape. Even if he was a god who had transcended eternal life, if he was caught off guard, he would probably end up in a worrying state. Ammon carefully investigated the structure of the trap according to Bright Moon Night's instructions, and after that, he took a deep breath and was also very afraid. Bright Moon Night was willing to tell all of this honestly because Ammon promised not to kill him and would let him go. Shubra told Ammon that the divine emissaries of the Anunnaki divine clan might fight with each other, but without the permission of the King of Gods, they could not kill the divine emissaries of the same divine clan. This was also one of the agreements between the gods after the War of the Gods. Shubra and the other 2 could help Ammon take down Dums and Bright Moon Night, but it was not easy to kill them. But Ammon was not a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan, and since Dums and Bright Moon Night had already tried to kill him, it was reasonable for him to kill these 2 divine emissaries. Bright Moon Night had been beaten half to death, and when Ammon asked him why he wanted to assassinate him, Bright Moon Night replied that it was Enrol who sent him. Bright Moon Night himself had no grudge against Ammon, and now that his life had fallen into Ammon's hands, even he himself did not understand why Enrol sent him to assassinate Ammon. Enrol was the god who guided him, and Bright Moon Night had accepted this task, so he had to do it. Ammon asked, "If I let you go, you will come back to assassinate me after you recover, otherwise you will not be able to free yourself from your mission, right?" Bright Moon Night bowed his head and did not speak, but Ammon felt a strong emotion in his heart. It was the great terror of life and death. With Bright Moon Night's achievements, Ammon's special ability usually did not work, but at this moment he could feel it so clearly, which meant that Bright Moon Night was desperate and realized that he would die today. People like Bright Moon Night may not be afraid of death, but they could not avoid the great terror of facing life and death. There were many kinds of human terror, such as encountering fierce beasts in the mountains, worrying that someone close to them would be hurt, living with corpses in a dark room, and so on. The meaning of terror was different, and it was not necessarily pure fear. On the battlefield, when the murderous spirit was boiling, the warriors would fearlessly charge at the enemy's swords and spears, not even having the time to think before they died. There were many such warriors. But if they were asked to face death calmly, the approach of death, and clearly feel the taste of life disappearing, most of them would not be able to stand it. And for a god like Bright Moon Night, the situation was even more special. They had passed the test of endless life and seemed to have endless life, and also had the hope of becoming a true god who transcended eternal life. Their judgment of the value of life was naturally different, and they would never risk their lives unless they had no other choice. They would not even do things that threatened their lives because it was not worth it. They clearly had seemingly endless life, but they could only watch themselves die like mortals. This great terror of life and death was difficult to understand without reaching the realm. Ammon felt Bright Moon Night's emotions, but he slowly told a story, the story of the temple of Isis's supreme warrior Gabriel being ordered to kill him. After he finished, he said to Bright Moon Night, "I cannot kill you and let you go, and I can also give you a chance to free yourself from your mission. But you have to agree to one condition. If you feel that you have fully recovered, you can come to me and duel. Don't make any more ambushes or assassinations. Wait until the day you are sure, and in the meantime, don't hurt my disciples or the people of Talon." Aman let Bright Moon Knight choose for herself, either die now, or make an oath to agree to this condition and integrate it into her spiritual imprint. Bright Moon Knight stood up and bowed to Aman. I understand now why you were standing in the temple with Murin in your arms? And Dums was so angry. In any case, I want to thank you for giving me this chance to choose. I swear to agree to your conditions, and when I am ready in the future, I will formally ask you for a duel. Bright Moon Knight told Aman everything she knew and was let go. Shubra asked again, Dums is still here, what do you want to do with him? Aman asked in reply, when the goddess sent you, did she have any instructions? Shubra replied, the goddess only ordered that if Dums is found to be trying to harm you, he should be taken down with the entangling vine net and handed to you, but did not say what to do with him. He clearly wanted to kill you just now. Even if you kill him, the goddess's meaning should be for you to do as you see fit. Aman nodded and said, I understand. Leave this person to me. Thank you very much. Shubra quietly told Aman the secret of using the entangling vine net, and disappeared with Shera and Taku. They may have gone back to report to Murin, or they may still be secretly protecting Aman not far away. At the edge of the big pit where a fierce battle had just broken out, only Aman and the tied-up Dums were left. Aman kept looking at Dums without saying a word, his eyes almost expressionless. This gaze made Dums' hair stand on end, and he finally could not hold it in any longer and asked with a red face, What do you want to do with me? Let me tell you, I will not beg for mercy. Aman smiled faintly, I did not ask you to beg for mercy, Dums. Today you wanted to capture me alive, but at the dangerous moment of the fight you used a killing move. Since you want to kill me, you have to consider the possibility of being killed by me. You have nothing to complain about. I just want to ask, is it worth it for you to die in my hands? This sentence hit Dums' weak spot. He hated Aman on one hand because Peloponnes was trapped in the underworld, and on the other hand, the more important reason was Murin. Aman's success symbolized his failure. Aman standing on the altar holding Murin was a silent mockery to Dums. The arrogant Dums looked down on Aman from the bottom of his heart, but in fact, no matter what he thought, Aman was the most qualified person in the world to mock him. Even if Dums was not afraid of death, dying in the hands of Aman was the least worthy choice, but unfortunately it seemed that there was no other choice. Dums glared and panted, You can kill me, I have fallen into your hands today anyway, but you have to know the consequences of doing so. Aman shook his head gently, Consequences? You mean if I kill you, it will lead to the revenge of the gods? I have never provoked you before, and I do not know Bright Moon Knight at all, but aren't you going to deal with me today? Whether it is killing me or sending me to the underworld, is there a worse result in the world than this? You are wrong about one thing, the person who should take revenge is me. This was very true. Would Aman let go of the oracle who assassinated him because he was afraid of offending the gods? It was already like this if he did not offend them, so what if he did? Dums was speechless for a moment, and Aman also sensed that a strong fear was gradually rising in his heart. Aman said again, If I were you, it is not worth dying in my hands. Even if I have to die, I will die in the hands of Queen Kella. Do you understand what I mean? Dums raised his eyes and stared at Aman hatefully. You want me to rush into the underworld to fight Queen Kella and rescue Peloponnes? This is a delusion. It is impossible for me to be Kella's opponent in the underworld. It is clearly suicide. Aman sneered. Then dying is better than dying like this. At least you have done your best, whether the choice is wrong or not. I feel the fear in your heart. You are proud. You look down on those lowly lives. But when your endless life is about to end, your soul is also trembling. Since you know very well that attacking the underworld by force is suicide, and you still can't save Peloponnes, I will give you two choices. The first is to die here, die in my hands. The second is to go back to the underworld and exchange for the goddess Peloponnes. She is innocent and should not bear the suffering for you. Dums hissed, You actually gave me such a suggestion. What is the difference between dying in the underworld and dying? Aman, of course there is a difference, because you can save Peloponnes. If I were you, I would do so. Think about it, you will die if you don't go anyway. Why not make your life more meaningful? Please make a choice. Dums closed his eyes, the yellow-green rope wrapped around his body trembling. He seemed to be thinking about something and trying to break free. Amon flicked his fingers in the air. A layer of golden light appeared on the rope, firmly binding Dums. Dums opened his eyes and shouted, "I choose to go to the underworld and exchange for Peloponnes. But I know her, it is useless to do so, she will still ask Queen Kella to exchange me, the final result will be the same." Amon nodded, "I have also thought of this, I will personally send you to the underworld, and wait outside the underworld for Peloponnes to come out and have a good talk with her." Dums shouted angrily, "Are you going to tell her that you rescued her from the underworld? Amon, is this how you please women? Seducing Murin is not enough, you even want to please Peloponnes." Chapter 208. 191. If I don't go to hell, who will? The reason why I didn't kill you is because of Peloponnes. Your life means nothing to me. God, Dums, you should know my origin. I was born in a very humble miner's family in Duk. My life has been hard since I was a child. Even the leftover bread has to be saved for the next meal. I never waste anything. Keeping you alive now is just making use of waste. This was what Amon said on the way to the underworld. Dums was furious, but he could not break free from the binding of the entangling vines. He could only say angrily with red eyes, "You can kill me, but you can't humiliate me like this." Amon said indifferently, "I'm not humiliating you, I'm just telling the truth. If it is a humiliation to you, it only proves that you are pathetic. Suffering in the underworld may be an opportunity for you. Otherwise, I'm afraid that your realm will always be the same. No matter how many hundreds of years pass, no matter how strong you become, you will not be able to understand more. You have passed the test of endless life and death, which is very lucky and amazing. In that test, did you witness the countless creatures in the world? I think all you can do is to look on coldly without thinking, but you have not thought of or even confirmed another possibility, that those creatures are yourself, your past life and future life. You have protected your soul but still do not understand the meaning of the test. You are so lucky that your luck ends here." Dums was a little confused by his words. After a while, he shouted, "What do you mean, do you want to guide me? The one who guides me is the God of wisdom." Amon replied coldly, "Unfortunately, his wisdom is not your wisdom. You have reached the place where you should go." Then he shook his hand, put away the entangling vines that bound Dums, and threw him directly from the clouds. At this time, they were already standing on a desolate plateau. There was no green color around them. The ground was covered with rough rocks, and the shrubs were low and sparse. Occasionally, traces of snow could be seen. There was a long, narrow, and deep valley below, like a crack on the plateau created by an invisible giant axe. On both sides of the crack were steep cliffs that extended all the way to the depths of the earth, filled with an inexplicable gloomy atmosphere. Amon threw Dums into the valley. At the end of the valley was the door to the underworld. Amon had been there once before. He did not want to be too close to the mansion of the dead, so he found a hill nearby to take shelter from the wind and sat down to wait quietly. As he waited for the goddess Peloponnes to come out, he looked at the eerie entrance to the mansion of the dead thoughtfully. This matter seemed a little unimaginable, and people might find it hard to understand. Amon also knew that Murin was not willing to go to Kella at first, but she reluctantly agreed at Amon's request. She had to satisfy Amon's wish before Amon would give her a promise. The reason why Queen Kella was angry and wanted to detain Amon was that after Amon entered the underworld, he did not only see his father, but also awakened the souls of the Dushians and released them inexplicably. Kella wanted Murin to exchange another person for Amon, and specifically emphasized that it was the man she had loved. This was done to humiliate Murin because of her famous curse, but it also had a purpose. Amon did not understand at first, but now he understood why. The men Murin had loved in the past had all achieved the 9th level, which meant that Kella needed a demigod to serve in the underworld. The underworld was a very special place, with the characteristics of both divine palaces and divine realms, but not quite the same as other divine palaces or divine realms. Amon already had the field of divine power, which could absorb the power to repair the soul from people's prayers and sacrifices, and the underworld was even more special. It imprisoned the undead in a space similar to a divine palace, and the desires of these undead were prayers to the god of the underworld. Aman had seen Professor Osiris's Book of the Dead in Bastet's spiritual imprint, which recorded the magic of the undead, and from it one could also see the structure of the underworld. Although the underworld of Osiris was not exactly the same as the underworld of Kella, the mysteries were generally the same. The underworld was a strange spatial formation, drawing on a very unique elemental energy, but just like a house, it also needed someone to take care of it, and this kind of work must be done by someone who had achieved the 9th level or above. Nedi, the gatekeeper of the underworld, should have achieved the 9th level, and Queen Kella herself was a god who had transcended eternal life, but why not have someone else do this kind of hard labor? Dums was sent here by Murin, which was exactly what Kella needed. Peloponnes was willing to replace Dums, and Queen Kella would also agree. The underworld was dark, only endless darkness and gloom, and living in it was worse than dying. Working here was more miserable than any kind of hard labor in the world. Just as Aman was thinking about this, he suddenly had a thought and looked towards the opposite side. Across the valley, on the top of the opposite mountain peak, in the bitterest cold wind, a man sat quietly, his clothes not fluttering, calm and silent. It was Xitigarbha Aman, whom he had seen in the desert. As soon as Aman looked up, he heard Xitigarbha's voice. "We meet again. I just saw you throw a man down." Aman replied, "Xitigarbha Aman, why are you here?" "Great compassion," Xitigarbha said, "boundless light has crossed the 10 directions of suffering. I followed the Buddha from the underworld of Osiris and came to this place to observe. I wish to use my beer to transform the netherworld and lead the dead into the realm of Baron Een to know what reincarnation is. Now that the vow has been made, the Buddha has given me the name of Xitigarbha Aman." Aman was stunned. "The vow has been made, then why are you still sitting here?" Xitigarbha Aman smiled. "I showed up and talked to you, and then I left to open the underworld." Aman frowned and pointed to the deep valley in front of him. "You also want to build such an underworld? Although I'm not a god, I know more or less about the mystery behind it. This is a way to continue to practice and verify after transcending eternal life, but I don't like it. You can do something else. Why do you have to be the king of hell?" Xitigarbha Aman clasped his hands and replied, "I don't like it either, I just feel sad when I see this place. Without this trip, I wouldn't have the opportunity to fulfill my vow." Aman narrowed his eyes and asked with interest, "Then did you go in?" Xitigarbha Aman replied, "The owner of this place, Kella, is very arrogant and ordered me to come back after I die. However, I have transcended life and death and achieved an immortal body, so I can't go in." Aman shook his head and said, "If you don't want to go in, then don't go in. I have been there, and it is not a good place." Xitigarbha Aman nodded across the deep valley and said, "I would like to hear the details. Please enlighten me." Aman was slightly taken aback and sat for a while without answering, as if he was quietly experiencing something. Judging by the gods that Aman had seen, this Xitigarbha Aman should have already transcended the realm of eternal life, but he used another way to express it, and the belief that he pursued should be different. At this moment, he asked Aman for advice, and at the same time, he taught Aman a spell. Of course, the two of them were not shouting at the top of their lungs in the cold wind across the valley, but they were communicating directly in their souls. According to Aman's experience, this was a high level of information sensing and detection magic. Xitigarbha Aman's method was slightly different, but the effect was the same. It was not some magic, but a kind of thought that contained all kinds of information in the soul resonance was directly imprinted into the mind, as if time was frozen and the non-existent space was opened up to evolve things. Aman could not yet be as brilliant as him, but this method was easy to understand. Xitigarbha Aman did not ask for help in vain, and when he opened his mouth, he demonstrated this special spell. As long as Aman mastered the key to it, it was not complicated to use it. Aman nodded to Xitigarbha Aman from afar and said, "This place is the underworld of the Anunnaki divine clan. It seems invisible, but it is tangible. It is isolated from the world by a formation, and there are 7 layers of space in total. The first layer is the void without beginning and end, and the 5 senses are useless. The second layer is the manifestation of desire, which is the prayer of the world to the god of the underworld. The third layer is the diffraction of desire, reflecting all kinds of ripples in the mind. The fourth layer is the life of the deceased, either resentful or regretful. The fifth layer is the flashback of the soul, seeing all kinds of things, as if reliving life. Everything is clear but helpless. The sixth layer is the lonely nothingness, without beginning and end. If the desire of the dead is not appeased, it will be difficult to escape. The seventh layer is the residence of the king of the underworld, where the throne of Kela is located. After answering Ksitigarbha's question, he used the mental evolution technique that he had just comprehended to directly transform his experience in the underworld into a space-time mental image. Only in this way could he explain it clearly. Otherwise, it would be indescribable no matter what language he used. Aman finally said, "This underworld imprisons the souls of the dead, so that people do not know that they are dead, immersed in this life and unable to free themselves, and with the power of the formation, it becomes the divine realm of the king of the underworld. I am very disgusted and even hate this place, because after my people died, their souls were imprisoned in it. Did you see me throw a person down just now? The cause and effect are all because of this. I have long wanted to tear this place down. I don't think you are an evil god. Why bother to build such a damn thing?" Aman told Ksitigarbha about his release of the souls of the Dushans and the subsequent series of disputes. This was a kind of verification, exchange, and mutual admonition between the two great achievers, and there was no selfishness to speak of. Ksitigarbha nodded repeatedly and said, Aman, you have already torn down this underworld in your heart. Whether you succeed or not in your cultivation in this life, you will not enter this underworld. What I want to build is not the same as what you see, not a divine palace, not a divine realm, but a world developed by the soul platform. According to what you said, it is the unfolding of my soul. It can't imprison anyone, but it allows the dead to witness what they have been trapped in for a lifetime. When they enter the barren bright realm at the end of their lives, everything they have done in their lives is clear. What others have experienced is reflected in their hearts, from this life to the heart of remorse and the heart of reincarnation. What is reincarnation? What you have done and what you have experienced in the world are clear, but you still cannot free yourself. That is reincarnation. The so-called underworld is nothing more than this. After Ksitigarbha finished these words, his figure disappeared out of thin air, but his mind seemed to be still in place. Through this mind, Aman glimpsed another world, not the time or space that once existed in this world, nor the divine palace or divine realm that Aman had seen. He saw all kinds of scenes, including the flashes of countless people at the moment of their death. All the experiences of their lives, from the birth canal of their mother, were incomparably clear. Aman had seen a similar scene in the underworld, but when his mind continued to go deeper, there were many subtle changes. The existence that a person could not encourage. The so-called living beings must first have self-awareness, be able to distinguish between the subject and the object, and know that they are interdependent with the surrounding world. When the life experience was clear, the impact of their actions on the world was all clearly reflected. These were the traces left in this world by the dead in this life, such as the love, hate, sorrow, and joy that they brought to others. At this moment, all turned into their own feelings. This thought only lasted for a moment, and then the soul would dissipate and go somewhere unknown. But if this moment was not freed, it would be like an endless eternity without beginning and end. People gave birth to the heart of injustice, the heart of remorse, and the heart of reincarnation. There were too many unsatisfied desires and regrets in people's lives, and there were too many injustices in the world. Whether people were good or evil, they all had the heart of injustice, followed by the heart of remorse. A very natural thought would arise: I have understood all this. If I were reborn again, what would I do, and what would I do? The thought of rebirth in this world was the cause of the endless fate of hell. There was also the endless heart of reflection and the heart of injustice. The heart of injustice alternated with the heart of remorse, and the endless suffering never stopped. Before Ksitigarbha disappeared, Ksitigarbha explained a concept to Aman, and Aman himself also understood it, just like what he said before throwing Dums into the underworld, but from a different perspective. In this world, the souls of the dead had to face the torture of fate, the judgment of the end of days. In the alternating heart of injustice and remorse, if they could not be freed, they would be reincarnated. If a soul was freed in such a world, it meant that it would directly become a god who transcended eternal life. But if they had such achievements, how could they fall into this world? The dead witnessed what was trapped, gave birth to the wonderful heart of reincarnation, and dissipated in a flash. This was the world evolved by the soul of Ksitigarbha. When did it appear? Just now, when he said the last word to Aman, it happened in the blink of an eye. Aman's mind could not go deep into the end of this world. He could not follow those souls to see where they went. He only heard the voice of Ksitigarbha again. If I don't go to hell, who will go to hell? Thanks to today's opportunity, I have obtained this achievement, thank you. Everything disappeared, and it was as if Ksitigarbha had never come. Aman was deeply shocked. He understood that this person had broken through a great achievement in front of him, a higher achievement than the gods who transcended eternal life. He could feel it but could not confirm it. He sat there in silence for a long time, looking down at the gloomy valley and murmured, I built the Garden of Eden in the human world. If one day I become a god who transcends eternal life, not only will I see the heaven that I yearn for, but I will also evolve the hell that people choose. Where does the path of the Garden of Eden lead to? This is the test of life. Who do you want to interrogate? I voluntarily exchanged Dums for the underworld. Why do you have to do this? Don't think that you are saving me. I will not be grateful if you go against my will. Suddenly, a woman's voice was heard. The voice was clear and sweet, but with a clear sense of rebuke. The goddess Jeshtanana floated out of the valley and flew into the air. She was still the same, barefoot, wearing a light white gauze dress and a wreath of branches on her head, but the 5-petaled rose on the wreath looked haggard and withered. Obviously, her days in the underworld were not easy. Aman stood up and replied, I don't need your gratitude, I just want to send Dums to where he should go. At the same time, he used the technique he had just comprehended to evolve the cause and effect of the matter into a thought, directly imprinting it into Peloponnes's mind, instantly explaining everything. The reproach in Peloponnes's eyes disappeared, and she sighed helplessly, so that's how it is, thank you for not killing him. But you can't free me by doing this, I have my responsibility, and I will go to the underworld to exchange him. Kella is waiting for me to return, but this time I will make a request of Demuzid that he will not do it again. Aman also sighed, I didn't kill him because of you, I understand why you did it, but understanding is not the same as agreeing. You are naturally responsible for Dums becoming what he is today. It is you who let him get everything too easily, it is you who made him so proud, and when he can't get it, he will feel injustice and resentment, but the luck you can give him has now come to an end. He is your brother, you love him, but the gods and the world are not obliged to give him anything. Even if you exchange him like this, it will be meaningless. Have you ever thought of letting him bear all that he has to bear? Serving hard labor in the underworld is exactly the experience he needs, not the price you should bear. Peloponnes bowed her head and said, I am very clear about what you said, but if I really do this, he will never have a chance to be free. I can't just watch him be trapped in the underworld and suffer endless suffering, not to mention that you've already pointed out my mistake. Aman looked at Peloponnes, his expression became very soft and gradually revealed a smile. I am very clear that if you leave Dums in the underworld and leave on your own, I am afraid you will never have peace of mind. Can I give you a suggestion? It may be the path to liberation. You should know that I come from Igut, and this suggestion is a myth that has been passed down in Igut. Peloponnes floated down opposite Aman, raised her eyes and asked, Before you became a god, your tone was like that of a god, and today you speak as if you are the god of the gods. What advice can you give me, Dums and Kella? Aman replied unhurriedly, The father of the gods in Igut's Ennead is called Ra. Coincidentally, Ra is also one of the titles my father gave me, meaning day and night, symbolizing a kind of reincarnation. Legend has it that Ra experiences the suffering of the world in the night, and brings light and hope to people in the day. If you must exchange for dumbs, no one can stop you, but you should understand what I mean. Let him suffer and then feel the light and hope. The hard labor in the underworld is not endless, and the joy in the sun is not eternal. If one day he or you can become a god who transcends eternal life, the underworld will no longer be able to bind him. If not, what is the meaning of all that you have guided and given him when the judgment of fate truly arrives? About the underworld of Xidigarbha, the description of this book is quite brief, only explaining the origin. But in the 241st chapter of my other book, Holy Mountain, I try to deconstruct the meaning of the underworld and the legendary 18 levels of hell in detail. That description is one of the best that my writing can achieve so far. If there are any readers who are interested, you can refer to the 241st chapter of Holy Mountain. Chapter 209. 192, Garden of Eden. Peloponnes looked at Ammon, her eyes sparkling, and she suddenly opened her arms. Ammon smiled and opened his arms very calmly, giving the goddess a gentle hug. Peloponnes whispered, "Thank you for your advice. I am good at summoning the power of the living to awaken. The day and night you mentioned are the 4 seasons that I have experienced. I will go to Queen Kella now." Ammon advised again, "Why are you in such a hurry? It is midsummer now, you can wait until midwinter to go. In such a cycle, there will always be people who bear it, there will always be people who are free, there will always be hardships, and there will always be hope." Peloponnes raised her head and said, "I know what to do, but how can I thank you?" As she spoke, the roses on her corolla returned to their delicate color, revealing their tender stamens in the cold wind. Ammon patted her on the shoulder and said with a smile, "If you are willing, I would like to ask you a small favor. I heard that the divine palace of Ea is the most beautiful of all the palaces of the gods in Anunnaki, and it was you who helped to build it. I am thinking of building a Garden of Eden, and everything in the garden will be built by the disciples, but the spatial magic circle that is isolated from the world can only be set up by those who have reached the 9th level. Can you lend me a hand?" Peloponnes smiled. The boundary of the divine palace is a stable magical space that can operate on its own. In fact, 9th level mages can also do this, as long as they are told the principles and mysteries. But 9th level mages like you and me are more suitable, and this is what I am best at. You can go to your Garden of Eden for the next 6 months. I know that the location of the divine palace is the secret of every god. Don't worry, I will not tell it to others, especially not to dumbs. Moses followed Ammon's instructions to the Garden of Eden and met up with Link and Medanzo. Gabriel, John, and Miss Phi were also there. Now that the affairs of Salem were taken care of by Aesop and George, and everything was in order, Ammon ordered his disciples to go to the Garden of Eden, which was far away from human habitation, to concentrate on their training. The so-called Garden of Eden did not exist at this time, and the address Ammon chose was where Link's original caveman tribe was. It was located on a steep mountain in the valley of Euphrates, a good place for seclusion and cultivation. The cavemen had long since moved to the city of Salem, but the village houses and the caves on the cliffs were still there, and they could be temporarily settled in after a little cleaning. Ammon gave Moses a taroculus, which recorded the blueprint of the Garden of Eden. The range was very wide. Not only did it include the original village of the cavemen tribe, but the eastern boundary also included the pool where Elmar used to live outside the village. The farthest point in the west was actually connected to the mountain cave where Bear was last hiding. In other words, the Garden of Eden spanned 2 high mountains, with one in the middle being in the air, and one needed the ability to fly in order to traverse the entire divine palace. There were water sources and even mines in the Garden of Eden, and there were 4 streams surrounding it. The residences of the disciples were scattered among these streams and mountains, and they could build the divine palace according to what they liked. The huge cave where Bear was last hiding was surrounded by white clouds, and could only be entered by stepping on clouds. It was a place for training that Aman had prepared for himself, and it could also be regarded as a remembrance of his past experiences. If the Garden of Eden was to be completely built according to this blueprint, it would take many years, but Aman was not in a hurry. He would first let it take shape, and then let the disciples build it over the long years. This paradise on earth from which one could glimpse the divine kingdom was, for Moses, the home of his soul, and the blueprint given by Aman did not include every detail. The first and most important step was to set up a spatial magic circle, using the natural elemental power between heaven and earth to make this space disappear from the world, beyond people's perception. First of all, there had to be such an outline, and then the various wonders of the Garden of Eden could be built, and this step would require a 9th-level divine emissary or a 9th-level mage. Many of the landscapes in the Garden of Eden were also quite interesting, such as the cold spring that Aman had instructed Moses to build in the mountains in the west of the Garden of Eden, exactly the same as the cold spring that crazy Ol had laid in the charcoal forest, and this was also a kind of silent memorial. Link and the others were a little worried when they heard that Dums had gone to find trouble with Aman. It had been 2 days since Moses arrived in the Garden of Eden. If Aman and Dums had a conflict, there should have been a result long ago. These disciples were thinking about going together to see what was going on, but they did not know where to find Aman. At this moment, Murin's elf maid, Shubra, came and told them not to worry, that Murin had sent people to help Aman take down Dums, and the disciples could just wait here. Even though they were mentally prepared, when the disciples saw Aman, they were so shocked that they were almost speechless. Especially Link, the more surprised he was, the wider his mouth opened, so wide that an egg could be stuffed in, making people worry whether his jaw would be dislocated. Everyone knew that Dums was Murin's ex-husband, and there was a reason why Dums had gone to find trouble with Aman. And when Aman came out of Murin's palace, not only did he get rid of Dums, but he also brought Dums' sister, Peloponnes, to the Garden of Eden. Looking at the two, they seemed to have a good relationship. Although the disciples did not say anything, they could not help but speculate in their hearts. Did Aman use some trick to win Peloponnes's favor again? This was too amazing, even more amazing than the gods. Yes, as expected of Ammonius. When Aman came to the Garden of Eden, he didn't say too much nonsense. He directly told the disciples that from now on, they would build their own divine palaces. According to the blueprint, they would first build the outer magic circle and listen to the instructions of the goddess Jeshtanana. Then he went to the mountain with the huge hollow in the belly of the mountain to train behind closed doors. Unless there was an emergency, no one was to disturb him. Before Aman arrived, the disciples had already cleaned up the hollow in the belly of the mountain. Although they had not yet carried out careful construction, the environment was very peaceful. Medanzo accompanied Aman into the hermitage. When there was no one else around, he winked and asked, "Oh, Ammonius, you are a god. Everyone says that Dums' ex-wife, Murin, abandoned Dums for you. Now, you have even abducted Dums' sister. Aren't you afraid that Murin will be jealous?" Aman punched him. "What nonsense are you talking about? It's not what you think. My relationship with Murin is not what people think." Under the command of Peloponnes, the disciples began to build the divine space of the Garden of Eden, similar to the construction of courtyard walls in a garden on earth. Gabriel's status here was very special. She was not Aman's disciple and was still Aman's prisoner of war. But everyone treated her as a guest in the Garden of Eden, and Gabriel also helped build the divine palace. 10 days later, Elmar also brought Raphael, so there was another guest in the Garden of Eden. Aman had accepted a private request from Goliath and had long had the intention to guide Raphael, but in such an indirect way, he made him learn on his own. Why did Aman want to train in seclusion? He needed such a period of undisturbed peace too much. Over the years, his power had grown stronger and stronger, and his achievements had grown higher and higher, but he had encountered one thing after another. People can grow through experience, but they must also mature through reflection. After the completion of the shrine in the city of Salem, Aman had not had time to carefully experience the subtle mysteries of the divine realm. Any other god, after having such a divine realm for the first time, would have spent many years in seclusion to consolidate the realm and feel the gains, but Amun had been busy all this time. With Amun's achievements today, he could already be called a god on earth, and he had to seek the meaning of this god and comprehend the seemingly endless life from the endless power that could repair the soul. In fact, at this level of training, there were many things that no longer needed to be rushed or even cared about. When Amun calmed down and immersed himself in the spiritual world, he had a new feeling that was different from before. When the form of your existence changes, your understanding of life will also change. When death was no longer an urgent threat for decades, people were not willing to experience the dangers of the world for no reason, and only wanted to live a leisurely and comfortable life, such as Peloponnes had spent hundreds of years like this. Of course, in their hearts, they were not willing to fight mortals to the death. Although they had great power, if they encountered great achievers on earth, they would still be hurt, and it was not worth it. People may die with another warrior on the battlefield, but no warrior would be willing to fight a rat in the forest. The metaphor may not be appropriate, but the mentality of the reaction was true. When the gods heard the prayers and petitions in the shrine and sent emissaries to assist the believers in carrying out their tasks, those emissaries often assisted in secret, striking at critical moments, and would not directly charge forward unless it was necessary. The emissaries sent by Seth, such as Hecate, only used various means to stop the footsteps of Moses and the others, and did not directly fight with Link or Medanzo. After all, there were not many emissaries like Batet who often killed demons, and Bastet's power was second only to the gods who had truly transcended eternal life in the Ennead. When Amun trained in the Garden of Eden, he needed to integrate all his previous experiences and everything he had learned, calmly reflect on the gains and losses, and consider the new meaning of existence as life changed. Although he was far away in the Garden of Eden, he was well aware of what was happening in the city of Salem. What he focused on training was the incarnation on the altar, where he could clearly hear the prayers of people, and through the prayers, he could also find out the true emotions in people's hearts. As long as he was willing, he could learn about the situation in the city of Salem from the altar, and if he was unwilling, he would not be disturbed. The gods could indeed hear the prayers of the believers, but sometimes they did not listen or did not bother to pay attention. For example, when neighbors quarreled, someone came to pray for Ammonius to make his neighbors sick, or when a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law did not get along, a wife came to pray for Ammonius to make her husband stronger and not be so weak at the mercy of her mother-in-law. Amun pretended not to hear these prayers, and after listening to them for a long time, he could only smile bitterly, and then he simply stopped listening. But the thoughts of the people on earth were indeed a kind of power, and when you could listen and feel it, it was as if your own soul contained countless souls, making the soul stronger and able to continuously repair itself when it was injured. Amun's current status was equivalent to that of the main god of the city alongside Murin in the city of Salem, a position that other divine emissaries and even some gods did not enjoy, and many divine emissaries envied him. Amun had turned into 2 faces and 4 arms in the battle against Dums and Bright Moon Knight, but he was not proficient in using it at the time, and now that he had a clear understanding of it in training, he had completely mastered this method. This kind of training could be long relative to the time on Earth, and if there was no particularly urgent matter, people might not see Amun for many years. But Amun also had many urgent matters at the moment, such as the completion of the construction of the divine space in the Garden of Eden as soon as possible. According to Amun's speculation, the disciples of Medanzo, Link, and John would soon face the test of losing their power, and they would need to spend it in the Garden of Eden. Peloponnes lived in the Garden of Eden for half a year, from midsummer to midwinter. In this half a year, she had basically completed the outline of the spatial magic formation, and the space above the mountains of the Euphrates River disappeared from the world, and people could no longer see it. But this spatial magic formation still needed to be strengthened to protect the Garden of Eden from the outside world, and it could only be built slowly in the coming years. 8 years later, Peloponnes left the Garden of Eden for the underworld of the Anunnaki divine clan and exchanged Dums. She made an agreement with Kella that they would exchange once every 6 months, and she and Dums would take turns to serve in the underworld. As Amun said, the suffering in the underworld was not endless, and the joy in the sun was not eternal. There was always relief in the darkness, and one had to learn to cherish the sunshine. Many years later, there was a legend in the world that the alternation of spring, summer, autumn, and winter was a symbol of the two gods taking turns to come to the world. That was something that would happen a long time later. Peloponnesus did not see Ammon when she left the Garden of Eden, and at that time the war between the city of Salem and the city of Enlil had already begun. At this time, except for Moses, all the disciples of Ammon had left the Garden of Eden, and even Murin and her divine emissaries had left the palace of Murin, and everyone was looking for Ammon all over the continent. Why did Ammon disappear? Why were people anxiously searching everywhere? It all started with a battle on the plains of Duk. If nothing unexpected happened, Ammon would also have meditated in seclusion for 100 years like the legendary gods. After all, there were still many things to worry about in this world, but he would not leave the Garden of Eden for at least several years. But it was a pity that the wind would not stop. After only a month of training in the mountains, Ammon, who was immersed in the spiritual world, suddenly had a faint feeling, as if there was a voice calling him, praying to him and asking for help. This kind of prayer was not something that Ammon did not want to ignore, and what was more surprising was that the prayer did not come from the shrine in the city of Salem. The prayer was calling the name of Allah, and it should be that Joshua and the others were in trouble. If Ammon had not cultivated into the incarnation of Ammonius and Allah at the same time, he would not have been able to hear this kind of prayer, and even if he could hear it now, the perception was very weak and could not be clearly understood. The people of the town of Duk were still on the way, and they took the golden plate left by Moses with them, and when they set up camp, they placed the golden plate with the 10 covenants written on it in the big tent, using it as a mobile shrine. Since Allah forbade them to build statues, they wanted to pray to the golden plate, and it was this prayer that Ammon sensed. After Moses left, the people, led by Joshua, passed through the city of Marduk and entered the plains of Duk. They could not walk very fast on foot, and it would take them another month to reach the city of Salem. With the 12 judges in the group, walking along the paths trodden by the caravans in the wilderness, the bandits and beasts that might appear would not pose a threat. Just as they were about to reach the city of Salem, the governor of Aesop sent a small group of soldiers to meet them. The captain told Joshua that the city of Salem was only 2 days away, but the situation had not been peaceful recently, and the governor of Aesop was afraid of accidents, so he sent people to escort them. There was a new friction between the city of Salem and the city of Enlil, and the signs were not right. According to the previous agreement between Aesop and the city of Enlil, the mines at the foot of the Assyrian plateau were owned by the people of the town of Duk, but Enlil was allowed to send highlanders to mine iron ore and parangons, with half of the harvest as their reward, and the two sides were at peace for a while. But as a steady stream of people from Enlil gathered across the plateau, they sent someone to the city of Salem to make 2 new requests. The first was to buy daily necessities from the city of Salem, because many of their supplies still needed to be transported across the plateau, and it was obviously easier to buy them here in Salem. The city of Salem was founded earlier, and the surrounding land had already been reclaimed, sown, and harvested for 2 seasons, and there were also many handicraft workshops in the city, and its products were much richer than those of Enlil. But of course, Aesop was unwilling because the supplies that Enlil wanted to buy were exactly what Salem lacked, and they also had to replenish their supplies from the outside world through the trade routes that they had painstakingly opened, so this time the negotiations fell through. Immediately after that, Enlil made a second request, that since their people were mining the mines, then the mines should belong to Enlil, and they would no longer hand over half of the fine iron and parangons. The reason was simple: the people of Duk were all dead long ago, and it was a land without an owner, and it was the gods who guided them to occupy it. Aesop told the other party very clearly that the people of Duk were still there, and they had the legal right to inherit it. Enlil, on the other hand, gave a deadline of 1 month, and if they did not see the people of Duk within a month, they would completely occupy the mines. Aesop realized that a real conflict would be inevitable, and stepped up the training of the city's army to set up defenses in various positions. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.